All right. I am calling to order the meeting of the City of Salem Budget Committee for April 30th, 2025. Now can the recorder please call the roll?
Member Bilicheks?
Present.
Member Nishioka?
Present.
Member Brown?
Present.
Member Manville?
Here.
Member Vieira Brandel?
Present.
Member Tigan?
Here.
Member Matthews?
Here.
Member Gwen?
Here.
Member Julie Hoy?
Here.
Member Nordyke? Absent. Member Varney?
Here.
Member Dixon?
Here.
Member Curtis?
Here.
Member Fuller?
Here.
Member Geyer?
Here.
Vice Chair Cohen?
Present.
Chair Allen?
Here. Thank you. Please join me now in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have some additions to the agenda, which includes a staff report and a few pieces of public testimony. Can I have a motion to approve the additions to the agenda?
I move to approve the additions agenda.
I'll second that.
Nishioka. So I have a motion by Member Cohen and a second by Nishioka. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We will begin this evening with public comment. Public comment will be I don't have anyone signed up virtually, so public comment will be taken in the council chambers. For members of the public who have signed up to provide comment, please state your name and neighborhood or ward. You will then have 3 minutes to testify before the committee. If you are representing a group, you'll be provided 5 minutes. The blinking yellow light will appear when 1 minute remains. When your time is expired, something about a red light, the red light will appear. Please stop your testimony at this time. Also, please no applause or crowd participation is allowed to ensure everyone is heard throughout the comments. I have 2 individuals who have signed up this evening, and I thank them both for their penmanship. I have Christina Puentes. If you would like to go ahead and come forward. I was just noticing the other one is actually not on the agenda. It's later for off the agenda.
Hello, my name is Christina Puentes, and I'm a 40-plus year resident of Salem community. I recently retired from the state of Oregon after a 24-and-a-half-year career where I was the statewide youth conflict resolution coordinator for the Oregon Youth Authority, mainly working with the gang population and trying to keep the peace within the youth correctional facilities, while also trying to challenge the young men's gang mentality so that when they paroled back to their communities, they could live a more peaceful and crime-free life. Since retiring at the end of 2023, I started my own business with the goal of trying to prevent as many young people as possible from entering the juvenile justice system and working with youth violence prevention in general. I currently do work with Marin County Juvenile Department, Salem Kaiser School District, the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, and HYB Counseling. One of the things I have done during my short retirement stint that I am most proud of is what brings me here today. In coordination with HYB Counseling and Sunny Saltamachia, we developed a moms group. We saw a gap in services, or more specifically, support for the moms of all these young men we were working with, specifically young men who were struggling with gang affiliation and or their behaviors. So we started a moms group to help them. Some of our moms, they're on their way. They're not here quite yet. These moms are some of the strongest and most resilient women I have ever met. What they have experienced with their children, and I say children because some of them are still children, is unimaginable. Our moms have gotten the call that their sons have been stabbed multiple times and are in critical condition in the hospital. Another that her son was shot multiple times. Another has a 12-year-old who has run several times and is repeatedly told, "I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do." He is 12 years old. Tragically, one of our moms lost her son last year to this senseless violence. These are good moms, loving moms who provide unconditional love for their sons. But what they're battling is a condition in our community that they need assistance with. and that is the youth violence issue, specifically the youth gang issue, youth gun issue, however you want to classify it. We have a problem, and it is only getting worse, and the youth it is affecting are only getting younger and younger. The youth violence issue is not a school issue, it is not a parent issue, it is not a law enforcement issue, it's not a juvenile department issue, it's a community-wide issue that needs a community-wide solution and action plan. No one agency or department can fix it or address it on its own. You need prevention, intervention, education, and suppression all being part of the total plan, working collaboratively together. Without a total community-wide effort, which includes resources and money allotted to these efforts, these youth will continue to feel as if they are disposable and nobody cares about them. These young people are good young men and women who do bad things at times, but at the core, they are good people. As a community, we need to find a way to come together and find a solution to the senseless violence that is going on in our community. I'm a firm believer in it takes a village, and our mom's group uses that term a lot to describe our little group. We're asking for help and support from the village. Law enforcement is part of that village. Their funding is crucial to continue and
Christina?
expand the work.
The 3 minutes are up.
Thank you.
Would you like to ask a question? Okay. Member Mayor would like to ask a question.
Christina, how much did you have left in what you were offering?
Probably 2 sentences.
Okay, would you mind coming down and finishing that? Thank you.
Thank you. Their funding is crucial to continue and expand the work around youth violence prevention efforts and help show these young people in Salem that they are not disposable. They are part of the village. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
CFO, I have a question for you. We have one individual who has signed up that would be later in the agenda. Do I have the authority to move them forward now so they don't have to wait till the wee hours of the night?
Yeah, if there's no objections from the rest of the committee.
Seeing none, Kelsey Lamb, you signed up, and your topic was the library budget.
Hello, I'm Kelsey Lamb, Ward 3. I also work in youth services at the Salem Public Library. While I am not part of the majority of staff that received a layoff notice this month, these proposed reductions affect me greatly when I think of the detrimental impact to Salem citizens. Last week, I mentioned several of the reoccurring library programs for youth that we are no longer able to provide with the staff reductions for the library from previous years. Previously, the Discovery Room, an activity room for young children that supports early literacy skills, was similar to visiting an exhibit at a children's museum, but with no admissions cost. The rooms were robustly designed, themed, filled with unique and incredibly creative activities, and were changed out frequently to promote early literacy skills for young children. Due to the restraints from previous staff cuts and a growing community, the room is still cared for diligently by library staff, but the result is a shadow of what was once offered there due to a lack of staffing resources. Many families still frequently use and deeply appreciate the Discovery Room, but the changes to the Discovery Room symbolize the changes that have happened at SPL in every area. The library holds a quarterly outreach and programming summit where we plan 3 months of programs for the library using a point system to limit our plans due to limited staff time for programs, events, and activities. Due to these limitations, we can no longer offer many programs that reoccur for the same demographic of library users during the same time or day. We do a lot with the little staffing we have, but we are always leaving programs we aspire to offer in our parking lot of ideas. I know counselors have been asked about additional community centers. Libraries are vibrant and fun community hubs that welcome everyone. Library staff would be thrilled to offer more services and activities for our patrons, but programming and services require dedicated staff to plan and execute these over many hours, which cannot be accomplished by volunteer work alone. Planning and executing a layered, involved, encompassing, and purposeful event or collection requires continuity and reliability that should not be expected from free labor. To create more robust and regularly scheduled offerings, it's simple. We need more staff. We have a Library of Things collection. However, libraries with more robust collections typically have a librarian or team dedicated solely to it, like Berkeley Public Library that offers a library of most home tools for any activity that anyone could ever wish to borrow. Pop-up libraries that we have offered at apartment complexes are an amazing way to reach community members that live far from the branches. But building connection requires consistency that is unachievable without dedicated outreach staff. If we had more staffing, we could dedicate staffing to ideas like other libraries, including permanent maker spaces, regular homework help, regular homeschool programming, being a summer lunch site with activities, classroom visits, science experiment to-go kits, regular crafting classes, exercise classes, and so much more. I will touch on this more at future meetings, but I implore you to consider how important staffing to Salem Public Library is during this budget cycle. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you, everyone who has provided testimony this evening. The next order of business on the agenda is approval of the April 23rd, 2025 Budget Committee meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes from the April 23rd, 2025 City of Salem and Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee meeting.
Second. Second.
Ooh, Tigan. Sorry, Tigan won. So I have a motion from Member Cohen and a second from Member Tigan. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion passes unanimously. These motions are easy. There are no action items this evening, so I will ask Mr. Eggleston to walk us through the information items.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have 3 information items this evening. One is a summary of Budget Committee actions through April 23rd, responses to committee member questions through yesterday, I believe, and then an alternate budget scenario. And I'm happy to take questions on the responses to committee member questions. The alternate budget scenario, we're actually going to talk about that after the results presentations. I have a few slides just to walk through that, just for clarity. It feels like a bigger discussion item, so if we could just hold that till a little bit later. But happy to take questions on any of the other information items.
I am not seeing any questions on information items A or B. Okay. Thank you, Josh. Again, no questions, and so we will move on. The next order of business will be a public hearing for state revenue sharing. The public hearing is now open. Mr. Zink, can you provide the staff presentation?
Good evening. There we go. Chair Allen, members of the committee, my name is Ryan Zink. Tonight we are holding a public hearing for state revenue sharing. This public hearing was noticed on the April 3rd edition of the Salem Reporter, and a staff report is included as item 6A in your agenda packets. The state of Oregon earns revenue from the sale of distilled spirits, liquor, license fees, and collects taxes from the sale of beer, wine, and cider. 34% of this revenue is allocated to cities in Oregon for general purpose uses. 20% of this allocation is distributed based on population alone. You'll find this listed in the you'll find this listed in the city budget book under General Fund Summary as state alcohol beverage on page 362. The remaining 14% is distributed to cities based on a formula that factors in population, property taxes, and income. You'll find this listed under, again, the general fund revenue section as state revenue sharing, also on page 362. It is this 14% distribution that is the focus of the public hearing tonight. A review of the 2025 State Shared Revenue Report published by the League of Oregon Cities shows that the revenue allocated to that 14% state revenue sharing program is expected to decrease by 7% in FY 2026. The decrease is in part due to the Oregon Liquor and Cannabis Commission's construction of a new warehouse as the old one was reaching capacity. Since the bonds used to pay for this construction are paid back through the gross liquor revenues, this reduces the amount left to be distributed to cities. Based on this information and the actual year-to-date receipts in FY25, the city is anticipating $2.15 million of receipts in FY26, which is a decrease of 7.7%. To receive these funds, the city is required to hold 2 public hearings on the uses of state revenue sharing funds. The first public hearing allows residents an opportunity to give testimony and to allow for discussion on the possible uses of these funds, which is the matter before you tonight. The second public hearing, to be held during a regular council session in June, will provide residents the opportunity to give testimony and to allow for discussion on the proposed uses of the state revenue sharing funds. These funds have no statutory restrictions. They can be used to offset the cost of any city services and can be used to offset and reduce the city's property tax levy for the fiscal year. Doing so would, however, reduce property tax revenue for the general fund. Historically, the revenue generated from this program is used to offset the expenses in the Police General Fund Patrol Division due to the nexus between police patrol and alcohol-induced collisions. Without this revenue, expenses for patrol would need to be funded through another general fund source or reduced. The proposed cost of police patrol in FY26 is just under $35.4 million, and you'll find that on page 140 of your budget book. At the conclusion of my presentation, there will be an opportunity for public comment. After public comment, the hearing will be closed. Staff recommends at this time that the Budget Committee recommend to City Council that revenue received from the State Revenue Sharing Program be used to offset costs in the general fund associated with police patrol. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Is there anyone present who would like to provide testimony regarding the use of state revenue sharing funds? Oh, please. Please state your name and your ward and your neighborhood. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much, Kathleen Treppo. I'm in Ward 7, and I understand that this budget cycle is extraordinarily challenged, and there are no easy answers for an estimated budget deficit of $14 million in the general fund. I've also been a strong supporter for years of quality and responsive police services and fire services. However, I would like to note that I participated in budget surveys in a focus group with consultants, and I felt that the questions were open-ended without context. So to extrapolate that the public has overwhelmingly endorsed preserving public safety levels at the expense of drastic cuts to parks, recreation, community service centers, and the library, in my opinion, is a little bit of a stretch. Yes, the public indicated that public safety was the top priority. However, public safety is primarily a reactive service provider. And for decades, studies have shown that prevention is far cheaper than intervention, whether we're discussing facility and park maintenance, at-risk youth, homelessness, or nuisance crimes. Youth programming and summer camps provide constructive and productive opportunities for youth to engage with role models and other children. They learn life skills and interact with social and supportive networks. Senior programs help stave off isolation and provide nutritional meals. Parks encourage activity and help people engage in nature. They cool off in the summer, and they bond with neighbors and strangers. Libraries stimulate the mind and provide community a gathering space. These are all positives that actually reduce crime. Investing in these types of proactive, beneficial programs and facilities goes a long way to easing the burden on police in a much more holistic and positive way. In general, reducing social and supportive programs will only result in increased homelessness, more kids without constructive outlets roaming the streets, graffiti, gang activity, isolated seniors, people cut off from free food and computer access, and the list goes on. That's why the federal government's massive cuts across all departments will greatly harm communities across this country, and cuts locally in Salem's general fund program areas will only make it worse. I would respectfully suggest that perhaps some of the state revenue sharing funds are actually applied to other program areas that have been proposed to be cut. So I urge the council to consider a more balanced approach to cutting services and to really push hard to encourage the community to support the livability levy. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to provide testimony regarding the use of state revenue sharing funds? I don't see any. Are there any questions for staff? Any questions for staff from the Budget Committee regarding state revenue sharing? Member Tigan.
Thank you, Chair. This is probably to either Mr. Zinke or the police chief. Just can you detail how many positions $2.1 million in state revenue sharing would support in the patrol division?
Ask Josh to.
Yeah, Josh Eggleston, Chief Financial Officer, approximately 15 to 20, depending on where they're at in their pay scale.
And do you know how many sworn patrol officers we have at any given time?
We have 196 authorized positions. I believe we have 11 vacancies right now.
So about 10% of the patrol division is supported by state revenue sharing?
I believe that's accurate, yes.
Thank you.
Member Fuller.
Thank you. My question is for Josh. This budget that we have in front of us, we are told reflects if the levy does not pass, correct?
The proposed budget, yes, that is correct.
Oh, still learning how to use the mics. Sorry. One thing I've wondered is, so because this is assuming that the levy does not assuming, that's the wrong word, because this is built to not include the levy because we don't know the outcome of it, is in the police, in the policing needs for the city, is that included in the potential rise in crime due to not having these spaces in the community? When I attended the CASA event, it wasn't CASA, when I attended the event where during Child Abuse Awareness Month, where the parade drove to the police station, Detective Courts, I believe it was said that the gangs did a better job doing youth outreach during COVID than the community did. So I'm wondering if we don't have community programs such as the library, the parks, things that engage youth, is that rise in crime accounted for in this budget that we're getting, or are we going to see needing to put more money into the police budget?
Really appreciate the question, and I don't think I can estimate what that might look like. What I can say is that we're holding the current staffing for police steady, so it's status quo budget for the police department. So it's not addressing current needs, it's the same staffing. So if there is an increase in crime or other things, it's not addressed through the proposed budget.
Thank you.
Member Manville and then Member Nishioka.
Thank you, Chair. Are we required to designate anything? Could we just put it, this feels like a paper shuffling game, and could we just dedicate it to the general fund and decide the general fund distribution later?
Yeah, appreciate the question. I do think we have to have an actual program used as an offset. I could look into that. I can't do that right this second. But I guess in lieu of police patrol, you could just say general services, and that would be sufficient. Historically, it has been recorded in police patrol for many, many years.
Thank you very much. So I'm not sure if this question would be directed to you, Josh, or to Chief Womack. as we heard just in public testimony, the concept of supporting some of the community services, one which is the Community Violence Reduction Program, or potentially any others that I'm not coming up with at this moment. I'm wondering if some of these funds might be directed to community programs within the police department. And so I don't know if that would be something Chief Womack would address, or if you, I'd just like to know if we might be able to, or if we have to say, could those be directed specifically to those types of programs? Thank you.
Chair and Budget Committee members, thank you. I'll take a shot at answering first, Josh. Basically, we've relied on this money traditionally in the general fund, so if you want to shift the funds to something else, it's going to come at the expense of the officers that it currently pays for. So yes, we could redirect the money, but it's going to have to eliminate some sworn positions.
So there isn't any wiggle room to have some of the funds be supportive of programs that maybe have been reduced recently?
Again, it's a shell game, so we still need the same amount of money to fund the current staffing. So if you move this to a different area, it's either going to pull from the general fund, or we're going to have to cut police positions to do that. So this isn't any extra money. This is money we've traditionally count on to staff the department.
And in fact, it sounds like it's going to be reduced in the sense that it seems like we're going to be getting less. So
it's going to have to be made up somewhere.
Like, I guess I better go out and buy some more liquor. Thank you.
That's one possible solution. Drink responsibly. Yes.
Was that in the form of a motion? Are there any other questions for staff? Yes, Member Vieira Brandel.
Good job. I have an adjacent question that the public testimony just logged in my mind. It's not necessarily related to these funds. I was curious if we have any more recent polling than what we received in our packets tonight about reception towards a livability levy. And the reason I'm asking is at the time it was done, I think there was a lot of misinformation being spread in our community about our budget and what was the cause of our budget deficit. And so I'd be curious what people's opinions are now that a lot of that is being corrected.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So the polling that was provided is the latest that the city has conducted. I'm not aware of any other polling.
Member Nishioka.
Yes. Josh, you might and remind us how much it costs to do a poll.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I might need reminded of how much it costs to do a poll. I believe it's somewhere around $35,000 to $50,000 to conduct a statistically valid poll.
Thank you. And probably to your question, Stacey, I would say that we haven't considered it, but based on the town halls and the interactions we've had, I think we're getting a pretty good feel. And I believe people, or at least people that have been involved, have a better understanding of what the general fund supports. So, fingers crossed.
Are there any other questions of staff? We're still in the state revenue sharing public hearing. Seeing none, the public hearing is now closed. Before we move on to the next item, agenda item, is there any other discussion or deliberation from the Budget Committee on this general topic?
If I may, Mr. Chair, we need a motion and a vote, please.
Well, it says that's following any further discussion on my agenda.
Got it. Okay.
I'm following along. Seeing no additional discussion, may I have a motion recommending the proposed uses of state revenue sharing funds?
I move that the City of Salem recommend the proposed uses of state revenue sharing funds.
Second.
So we have a motion by Member Cohen and a second by Member Matthews. Is there any discussion on the motion? Member Curtis.
Thank you. I just want to be clear. So this money goes specifically for patrol costs and not into the larger police budget, correct?
That is correct. So in our financial structure, we have funds, which you're familiar with, general funds. We also have cost centers. So police field operations, police patrol has a dedicated cost center. So that is where this revenue is coded to.
Follow up, Member Curtis?
Thanks. So Josh, if we, this is just hypothetical, in our deliberations, want to reduce officers, let's just say, or something in the police budget, would this money going in there preclude that?
No, it wouldn't. It only covers a portion of the patrol operations.
Member Varney.
Thank you. I'm just trying to recollect here, because we're talking about the state revenue sharing for alcohol. What about the other categories? When do we address that?
Yeah, appreciate the question. So each area of state revenue sharing has its own statute that governs how we get it, how it's received, what are the steps we need to go to. This one's fairly unique that it requires 2 public hearings, one at the Budget Committee, one at the City Council level. Others are as simple as we get a survey and we say that we'd like to receive the state revenue sharing, and it's received. So this is fairly unique and has been around for many years. We have to have the 2 public hearings.
Follow up?
Okay, thank you. So at some point, again, remind me, I'm trying to remember here, are the other state shared revenues unrestricted as well?
There's a mix of restrictions and unrestricted. One example of a restricted state share revenue is state highway revenue, gas tax, registrations. That goes into the transportation fund for use in the right-of-way, streets, sidewalks, things like that. The majority are unrestricted, the ones that go to the general fund, or in this case, this is the Budget Committee and the City Council actually applying a restriction. So this is the proposed use, and that's the way we would use it. So we'd follow the direction for the Budget Committee and the City Council.
Okay, thank you. I'll have other questions later. Thanks.
Member Manville?
Yeah, just to clarify, what's the total budget for patrol services if this is 2.1 of a larger chunk?
I think Ryan said 35 million. Is that correct, Ryan?
The total patrol budget is $35,391,370, or just under 3.4 million.
Thank you, and I apologize that you had to repeat that. My colleagues noted that, so thank you.
Dr. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. CFO or Mr. Zink, I have a question. In regards to the revenues from the state shared program, Mr. Zink said there will be a decrease for the current year at 7.7, I think is right under $179,000. Do we know if there's going to be another decrease for the following year?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So the League of Oregon Cities works closely with the state on the projections for what those revenues might be. There is a level of uncertainty. It is based on usage. So for example, we saw an uptick in like 2020, 2021, and then it's come down after that. And there are other things that impact it. So like the construction of a new warehouse that's diverting funds that would have historically gone to cities. So choices that the state makes does impact those funds as well.
Got it. So relatively speaking, there is a good possibility based upon that projection that we could see another decrease in the next biennium.
There's potential. I'm not sure where they're at with the warehouse and if they're planning to issue more debt. I'm not certain on that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
No worries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Member Brown. Are there other questions or discussion on the motion? Member Vieira Brandel.
I'm going to give you so many opportunities to practice.
Thank you.
I think I just wanted to come back to Member Fuller's comment about kind of exploring other uses of the funds, or just the point of how much our community services also relate or contribute to the health of our community, and how that contributes to the safety of our community. And I know that's a larger conversation we'll probably get into with tonight's result areas. But I think our budget is a reflection of our values, and I think we have heard time and time again from the public that they really want us to try to prioritize, or to not just try to prioritize our library, our parks, our Center 50 Plus. And I think this is maybe a little bit of a paper shuffling exercise, and I do think that this would be a nice way to signal to people that we do care about those things and that we do want to prioritize those in our budget as well.
Other discussion on, there's a motion on the floor, and other discussion. I am not seeing other discussion, so we do have the motion, and the motion is to recommend the proposed uses of state revenue sharing funds as proposed by staff. So all those in favor of the motion on the floor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, please say no. I believe there were 2 noes. Okay. So the motion passes. All right. We are now at item 7 on the agenda. Staff presentations for good governance result area and the safe and healthy community result area. Budget Manager Leinenbach will be up first with good governance. You are already there. Thank you. Take it away.
I am. Good evening, Budget Committee. My name is Callie Leinenbach, and I'm here to present this evening the fiscal year 2026 proposed budget for good governance. This area includes departments and activities providing support to direct city services, and those direct services are shown in the other result areas in the budget. Good Governance has a proposed expenditure budget of $137.9 million, representing 18% of the total city budget. This result area includes support services from multiple departments, including the city manager's office, finance, legal, and enterprise services. There are 223.04 full-time equivalent positions providing services related to good governance. The fiscal year 2026 budget includes the proposed elimination of 4.5 FTE in this result area. There are 3.5 FTE in the general fund, consisting of the payroll supervisor, an accountant in finance, a half-time management analyst in legal, and then 1 security officer in facilities services. Of those positions, only the accountant would be proposed to add back if the levy was successful. There was also 1 vacant clerk messenger position in document services proposed for elimination, since that team has been successfully operating with the existing staffing. Also, there were several positions added mid-fiscal year 2025 by City Council. There was 1 HR business partner position to help with increased workload related to the transition of the city providing ambulance transport services. And then another 3.25 FTE were added to help with the implementation of the new enterprise resource planning system. Most of the expense for the ERP-related positions would be funded by the safety and livability bond during the implementation. So most of the programs in good governance are similar to prior years, but there are some changes proposed for fiscal year 26. Included in this budget is the city starting to administer a paid leave program instead of paying the state for Paid Leave Oregon. This is not only expected to realize several $100,000s of cost savings annually and provide better tracking of leave, but also streamline the claim process for employees. In preparation for the move out of City Hall, many departments have opted to have document services scan records that need to be retained. And thousands of records in over 300 boxes are in the process of being scanned currently into the city's record retention software. So this will help save on moving and storage costs during the seismic retrofit and have less to bring back to the new building. Also, facilities completed their first year of a 5-year program to phase out R22 refrigerant in all city-owned HVAC systems, as it will be banned in 2030 by the Environmental Protection Agency for its harmful impact on the ozone layer. Staff in information technology and other departments have partnered to implement or upgrade several software systems to streamline city processes, create efficiencies, and enhance customer experience. A custom AI assistant for city staff, a new utility billing system, and an upgrade to the work order system used by Public Works, Parks, and Facilities are just a few examples of completed projects. And for the 26th year in a row, the Finance Department was awarded the Government Finance Officers Association Certificate in Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. This is the highest honor of achievement for government financial reporting. This award aligns with another year of no audit findings from the city's independent financial auditor. The city also applied for the first time in many years and received the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award from GFOA. And with that, we are available for questions.
Are there questions from the committee on this service area? Member Varney.
Thank you very much, Chair. I had a question about the city paid leave program. Now, is that replacing the Oregon paid leave, the state program?
Yeah, so the city will administer that ourselves, and the 1% contribution that would normally go to the state for Paid Leave Oregon, that will go into a separate cost center in the self-insurance fund. And so all of the claims payments would come out of that cost center.
Okay.
Do you have a follow-up?
I had one more question. And I know I asked this back on the EMS steering committee, but why is under the general fund fiscal year 2025 mid-year additions, why is the one business partner in HR being funded out of the general fund instead of the EMS fund?
So a lot of times with internal services positions, their costs are recovered through the internal cost allocation program, so the ICAP. I think I might have said that wrong, but it's the ICAP. Anyway, the costs are expended in the general fund, but then they're reimbursed from other funds. So it's an indirect way of cost recovery, but the position lives in the general fund.
Okay, thanks. Just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, the general fund will be reimbursed through the ICAP charge.
Member Nishioka.
Thank you. Back to the question that Member Varney asked. For the city paid leave program, are there any risks in doing this versus working with the state? I understand that we will have those funds, but I'm just wondering if there's any risks that might be involved.
I mean, I think a risk would be if the claims expenses were higher than the contribution we were collecting, but with current analysis, that's not expected to be the case.
Thank you. That's what I was looking to hear.
Member Matthews.
On the same track with the paid leave, so are the cost estimates and everything else that we have, do we incur costs for administering that, and has that all been factored into what our projected actual profit, or I guess not profit, but savings would be?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So the Human Resources Division already does a lot of work on the paid leave Oregon program. So we've fully expect actually the more streamlined approach to make up for any additional administrative costs kind of on the back end. So there's a lot of coordination happening right now with the city and the state and employees to try to make claims flow, and this will make it fairly seamless. So we actually expect reduced administration time for the program.
Member Bailicheks.
Thank you, Chair. I guess my question is, are the city employees on board with this change? Are they consulted? Is this their wishes or something that the city is putting on them? Because, of course, as that insurance provider, the insurance provider can deny claims, and that's one way to save money, and everyone's here is excited about saving money.
Yeah, really good question. So in order to have an equivalent plan, it has to be approved by the state, and it really goes through the same criteria for approval. So it shouldn't look any different as far as the approval criteria for the city versus the state. Just the process is more streamlined, but I will see if HR wants to weigh in on that at all.
Good evening, Michelle Bennett, Assistant Director of HR. The Paid Leave Oregon program, we currently run our protected leave program side by side with that. So bringing it in-house would eliminate the duplicate service, the duplicate process. We have to follow the same guidelines to approve or deny claims. So there is very structured legal guidelines for approving claims.
Well, just back to my original question, do the employees know about this? Are they on board? I mean, if they're supportive, I am too. If they don't know this is coming, then I would be concerned.
Sorry, yes, we have had conversations with our union partners, and they are on board with this. It does streamline the process. The state has a 30-day delay in approving the paid leave portion. So this would increase the accessibility to our employees for the service or for the benefit, as well as it's included in their regular paycheck as their income. So they get all of their deductions taken out of that money, and where now they get a separate check from the state. So they also get a separate W-2 and have to file taxes differently. So this is a benefit to the employees as well.
Is it split 0.6, 0.4 between employer and employee?
We currently cover the whole 1%. So the city of Salem pays the 1% to the state. We would continue to do that and still realize a savings to the city.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So Michelle, maybe you want to talk about, so while we were on the state program, we did receive complaints from several employees about the delay in the process. And by bringing that internally, we would save money, but also it is better service to the employees. So do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, correct. Like I said, originally it was taking months for approval. Still today, it takes at least 30 days, and they won't let you apply for benefits prior to 30 days from your date of anticipated absence. So people who know they're having a baby have to wait until 30 days before they're ready to leave to file their paperwork, which takes 30 days to process. So it does help our employees, and we have amazing customer service. We have an analyst who is managing all of our protected leave, so he guides our employees through the process, which the state doesn't. So this is a very unique benefit, and we will be one of 2 cities in the state who have brought it in-house and become self-insured for Paid Leave Oregon. So,
Member Matthews.
So back to Chair Allen's question kind of about the breakdown of who pays the Paid Leave Oregon amount. I'm somewhat ignorant on the whole program as far as the traditional breakdown of costs, but is it pretty common that employers pay the entire 1% and none of the burden sits on employees?
that's something also unique to the city of Salem. The decision was made prior to my tenure here to pay the 1%. We would have had to negotiate the costs with our unions and felt that taking care of that was a benefit to the employees, and the time and the expense of negotiating with all of our unions would have cost us more than that 0.6%. Bringing this in-house, we're not paying anybody. We're putting the money in an account, and it's used. If it's used, if it's not used, it just stays in that account. We're sending the 1% to the state. If we use it, great. If we don't, the state sits on our money.
I would simply take exception to the implementation of paid leave Oregon to be a mandatory subject of bargaining. That's a state mandated tax, much like the transportation tax, and I don't believe that those are mandatory subjects of bargaining, but that's my opinion. Member Matthews?
So that I'm clear, so does that mean that this is part of our union contract currently, or
It is.
it is not?
Yes.
It is. Okay.
These are all part of our contracts.
Gotcha.
Member Cohen.
Thank you. Not talking about paid leave because my wife used it and it worked really great. So I'm thankful for it. I'd like to talk about rock and hard place. So 80% of our budget is people, right? As people incur costs due to step increases or through union bargain negotiations, their pay increases, which then puts pressure on the budget. The reason why I bring this up is last year, the Salem-Keizer School District told the teachers union, we don't have enough money to pay for your staff increases. The teachers union didn't agree and voted for the increase in their staff pay, which then led to a reduction in force of teachers, including my wife. I don't want that to happen here, but with the general fund budget going the way it is, and if the levy passes, it moves librarians and parks out of the general fund. The target will then be on police and fire because they'll make up the majority of the general fund for personal services. What is the city doing to work with those two unions, police and fire unions, to ensure that we're not going to come into this situation where we're going to ask the police and fire to talk amongst themselves? Would you rather have pay increases or lay off your partner? Because I know for me, as a teacher, I'd rather have status quo salary than lay off the brand new employee. So I just want to know, how are we doing with our labor negotiations, keeping them with the understanding that, yes, I think everybody should get a fair wage. I do. But there is this constraint within budget that we have to be realistic about in saying that we will not always have the money to afford for increases, whether it be COLA or other kind of wage increases. So I'd just like you to comment on that. Thanks.
That was a real heavy question. A lot of speculation. I think we start with having a really good relationship and open communication and being very transparent with our union partners. And when we negotiate with our various unions, we do share our budget information. We share our wage information. We share our cost burdens with our employees. And we do go in letting them know our position with our budget and the cost of what we negotiate and the effects that that can have on the workforce. So our SPEW contract, for example, our police contract, we didn't negotiate wages in the third year because of our budget constraints. What they wanted and what we could give them were very far apart, and not knowing what was going to happen with the budget, we made a very conscious decision to not put something in there for that third year of the contract because we didn't want to hire people now and get to year 3 of the contract knowing that we were going to have to lay someone off because of that negotiated rate. So we do work with our partners. Again, it's very transparent. We work with our council, our department directors, and do take our fiduciary responsibilities very seriously for the city. I hope that answered your question.
Sorry for adding, but I would add to that police and fire have binding arbitration, and arbiters don't seem to frequently take ability to pay into account when rendering their decisions. So that's another piece of the puzzle. Are there other questions at this time? Mr. Manville.
Thank you, Chair. First, kudos to Ms. Leinbach and Eggleston and the financial team. That set of awards, you need a bigger wall for, apparently. And the real outcome is in a good bond rating. And so that saves us an amazing amount of money, and it's great to have that outcome, not just output. And thank you for your work. And to the whole city team that works on that, and the city council keeping within policies as recommended. So all that love. That said, I'm just kidding. I'm curious about the communications expense on page 66 of the budget. It looks like communications has been something that's been highlighted in various it looks at the city audits. The communication strategy and delivery, it looks like we're putting a little bit more staff time into it, but lowering the overall expense. And I don't want to nitpick things. I was just curious if there's any input on whether that reflects anything larger in the city's approach to communications.
If we may, could we come back to the question?
Is that you want to bring it back as a written response?
Unless someone comes up here shortly and is able to answer, yes.
Fair enough. So it's page 66. There's an increase in FTE, but a significant decrease in the overall budget for communications.
I can ask an intervening question if it's helpful.
Go right ahead.
I'm curious, just for the benefit of the budget committee, and the move that is going to be the temporary move out of City Hall and then coming back and all these paper records. I'm curious if there's anyone on staff that can provide any detail about the space saving, either from the paper records or just from the police department having moved out a few years before. If there's going to be, from a good governance perspective, what the utilization of the building will look like when the seismic retrofit is finished.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I'm not sure if I'm the right one to answer it, but I'll certainly take a stab at it. So one thing we're looking at is identifying currently underutilized space on the first floor where the police department vacated and using that for some record storage. So currently, many departments, including finance, have offsite storage for records. So we're looking at saving in the long run by returning some of those leased spaces and utilizing space we already have. And I do see Brian Martin. Do you want to speak to that more specifically?
Or question, but I'm happy to hear the answer.
Sure. Yeah, Brian Martin, Public Works Director. I'm thinking through what the floor plan looks like as I'm walking up here. There are spaces on that first floor where the police department used to be that are going to remain shells, I guess you would say. So still vacant space that would allow for some type of expansion in the future. There's still a space for record storage, based on some of the vacated space that was left unoccupied when the police department left. In fact, we're going to use some of that space to move items into during the construction because it's not going to be used going forward. So As far as filing systems and how we go forward with the filing, I'm not exactly sure what that looks like yet, and I think we could bring that back, with a response.
I think my follow-up, having kind of heard this, even just a little bit of discussion, is really curious how many people would come back to the building. And maybe this has a tie to Member Matthews' question about space that the city owns across the city in general, but we'll pay a lot of money to have now a safe building for a seismic event. And just my first reaction is like, well, I'd like to get people safe rather than paper. And so if there's, just thinking about that kind of long term in terms of how do we best use the places that we've made safe for people would just be my suggestion.
Yeah, I would add, we are looking at everyone that's here now moving back. And then we have some departments from community development and planning that are located in buildings downtown. They will be moving into City Hall and vacating the spaces downtown, which then could be leased out to businesses.
That's great. Thank you.
CFO.
Oh, sorry, I meant Dr. Brown up on the screen.
Oh, that was a this. You're pointing up. Okay, sorry. Dr. Brown, I have a hard time remembering to look up on the screen. I apologize. Take it away.
No, you're all good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. CFO, because I think this question is for you or maybe Director Bennett in HR. So in our budget book on pages 86, there is a DEI position, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm trying to reconcile the difference in that particular amount because it goes to like a 0.25 in that position. But there's another place in the book to where it's the complete opposite. So I'm trying to reconcile that. And that's on page 66. So on page 66, the FTE has changed. So if someone can just reconcile that for me from the 0.25 now to the 0.15.
I mean, I think this question is also related to the question about the communications program. Every year there is, we work with departments work internally to come up with their staffing allocations. And so depending on how much time they think they will spend on each program, that FTE amount and dollar amount can fluctuate. So I think that's what's happening here with the DEI program, is just a different assumption about how much a staff time might be spent on that program.
So that would mean that it shifts from person to person to get the job done, or does it not stay with one person? Does it moves around?
So each year an analysis is done, and whether it's the same person or different people, we could definitely do some research and come back to you, Dr. Brown, but the way positions are allocated across programs can fluctuate year over year.
Yeah.
So,
and I'm totally fine. I think the city manager shared with me a while back. She kind of educated me a little bit on how that fluctuates. So I'm good.
The city manager does have a comment on this subject.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just want to kind of clarify on the city manager's the budget on page 66, the reason why the budget reduced, even though the number of FTE working on the communication strategy increased, is because through the enterprise leadership audit that Moss Adams performed, one of the recommendations was we did have the communications manager, and we reclassified that position. The recommendation was to reclassify the position to the actual level work, which is the PIO work. So there was a reclassification from a higher level to lower level. So that gave us some cost savings. So that is why you see the reduction in the budget.
Thanks, Madam City Manager. I appreciate that because I do recall us having that conversation a while back. So thank you for the clarity. Appreciate it. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Member Brown. We're on good governance. Are there other questions of staff? Is there any discussion regarding good governance? I am seeing none. There'll be an opportunity for the Budget Committee to circle back later. Thank you, Ms. Leinenbach. We will now have Josh take us on to the next results area.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next result area is safe and healthy community, and with the exception of infrastructure result area reviewed last week, the largest portion of available funding is dedicated toward a safe and healthy community. Detailed program information for this result area begins on page 117. The proposed funding for the Safe and Healthy Result Area is just over $232.6 million. Programs in this result area provide services such as court proceedings, emergency medical and fire response, police patrol and crime investigations, emergency dispatch, and building permit and inspections. Safe and Healthy Community has the most positions with a total of 623.96 FTE that provide services to support this result area. Workforce changes for this result area include the elimination of one vacant Code Enforcement 2 in Code Enforcement Officer 2 in the Building and Safety Fund. 2 limited duration Inspector 1s are being proposed in the fiscal year 2026 budget as part of a pilot program with the fire department, which will focus on fire permitting. The program will specifically aid in getting commercial properties in compliance with fire permitting regulations, improving safety in the community. In the EMS fund, the City Council added 60 FTE in October of 2024 to be adequately prepared to start the city provided ambulance service on July 1st, 2025. The fire department has filled several administrative positions as well as the ambulance staff positions in a seasonal capacity to begin training prior to the new fiscal year. And specifically for the ambulance service update, I know we touched on this last year, but it is a significant shift in the budget, significant FTE add, significant dollar add. We are planning to begin service July 1st, 2025. The onboarding of 60 EMS staff, as I previously mentioned, 52 of which are the single role paramedics or EMTs. There is a new EMS division headquarters, and the EMS fund is supporting dispatch costs and support service costs. So when Callie mentioned the indirect cost allocation plan, they're also paying for their other indirect service costs as well as the dispatch costs. So historically, the general fund has paid for the dispatch costs for all of emergency operations, including transport. So with the EMS fund coming in as an enterprise fund, we're moving that dispatch cost specifically related to ambulance service to the EMS fund, about $900,000 offset from the general fund, as well as several other contracted services that go along with it. There are also several highlights for the Safe and Healthy Community Results Area this past year. We talked about the emergency medical services. You probably heard about the mutual aid. The fire department and the emergency operations division also provided mutual aid to California in January 2025 to combat the Palisades fire over 2 weeks. The Willamette Valley Communication Center, who provides 911 service, integrated in telecom electronic guide cards for dispatchers, which provide considerations and services to dispatchers, can provide callers depending on the situation, which is an improvement over the previous process. Also, the Police Department's Community Violence Reduction Initiative program, which engages community members and criminal justice partners on efforts to reduce violence in our community, The addition of a limited duration position in the city manager's office for this purpose is not funded for fiscal year 2026 after several failed recruitments, but the response and engagement of the community with some current police staffing has resulted in some increased engagement in that area. Emphasizing partnerships and local engagement, the police department has joined forces with the Polk County Sheriff's Office, Oregon State Patrol, and the National Highway Safety Administration on an enforcement campaign to reduce the risk of dangerous high-speed crashes in downtown and West Salem. Another highlight is the police department has continued to make progress in its 30 by 30 campaign, which aims to have 30% of the force, aims to have women be 30% of the force by 2030. At the end of 2024, the department had women comprise 14% of the force. The national average is 10%. And finally, due to staffing constraints, the Community Action Agency, known as CAU, positions were repurposed and were moved to the patrol operations. The Community Action Unit focused on community engagement and enforcement downtown, often on bicycles. These next few slides highlight some statistics for both the fire and the police department, just for your information. And I'll also point out the responses provided in the additions agenda included additional information and some maps with different responses. This one you've probably seen before in previous years. It shows the call load and the response time percentage and the relationship there over the last 14 years or so. And the increased call load combined with the decreased response time. With the latest response time percentage, you can see the corresponding average response time for each quarter mile squared in Salem. This is also in your additions agenda. I realize it's very small on the slide and also in your printout of the presentation, but a larger version is included in your packet. The number in each square demonstrates the number of calls for each area, while the color demonstrates the average response time. Also, as referenced in the additions agenda, the fire call load density is displayed here. This shows the concentration in downtown and northeast Salem. Similar to the fire call density display, the police violent crimes are displayed on this slide and demonstrate a similar distribution of calls. And just a few data points. The police department talks about these fairly often, but I thought it was relevant for this discussion. Overall, the trend for violent crimes has increased over 95% since 2010. This is a concerning trend that the police department is actively trying to address. And I apologize for the lots of different numbers and things going on this slide, but it has a lot of different information. And I actually like it. It has a lot of different useful things. One thing we did add there on the right is comparable jurisdictions and officers per thousand. So that's a common metric used to gauge, your sworn officer, how many you're authorized compared to your population. So as you can see, we rank there at the bottom at 1.09 officers per thousand. You can also see the trend there since 2004 of the reduction. So a little increase in 2006 for the officers per thousand. And I will note, 2013 to 2020, the staffing was static. So 187 sworn officers. It didn't increase during that time. A little shift since then. And just having been around for a lot of those years, they were largely increased that came with revenue in some cases. So the behavioral health unit, other things like that. And just for your information, those positions were retained even though the revenue went away in most cases, both for the school district and for the behavioral health unit. This does represent a concerning trend, that, especially when you look at the slide before this with the violent crime increases in Salem. You've also probably heard the police chief talk about it, but kind of the retraction of services down to the core. So really coming back to 911 call response as opposed to the more proactive policing that happens in other of the special units, special teams. And at this time, staff are available for questions and committee discussion. Thank you.
Oh, I doubt there'll be any discussion. Member Curtis.
Thank you. This might be a little long. I'll try to be as brief as I can. So I just want to preface this by saying with police and fire being 60% of our general fund budget, it's really important for us to ask questions, and maybe some difficult questions and questions that make it sound like we don't support these services sometimes, but we have to ask them and we have to find out the answers. So one of the reports I was looking at the other day is put out by the police department, Salem Crime Statistics, 15 Years in Review. And from that, I learned that Salem's population has grown, and this is since 2015, grown since 2015 by 24%. Evan, my colleague here, did an analysis, I don't know, last year sometime, that the police department's budget increased 30% since 2013. So that's a few years before 2015. So according to the most recent statistics, violent crime, there's a lot of different ways of slicing and dicing violent crime, but I'm just going to take one of them. So violent crime in 2024 was 43.5% higher than the 15-year average. So I guess, and I'm sure there's explanations for this, but one of my first questions was, if there's been a 30% increase in the budget, what has that given us? What has that bought us? Our crime, violent crime is up. You know, we know that property crime is down, or at least not reported. But, you know, I just started thinking about what deters crime? You know, is it more police officers in neighborhoods? You know, one of our testifiers today said, you know, it's a combination of a lot of things. So yes, we want police. Everybody wants police. Of course we do. But if we're cutting back these services that provide a safe community in other ways, whether it's a library or activities in your neighborhood park, you know, we know where most of this violent crime is happening, and that could be the neighborhoods that are most impacted by some of these social cuts. So I just have a real, and I know that crime is a socioeconomic problem. You know, police, you know, can't solve that, and I understand that. But I guess what I would like some discussion about is we can keep investing more and more and more in patrol officers or policing in general, and we're still seeing the violent crime going up. So is that a good, when we're looking at this huge shortfall of $14 million and police and fire are 60% of that budget, we have to look hard at this stuff. And I don't have an answer, but I just wanted to give you a little slice of what I sort of learned when I looked at this report, and I have just questions about it. So that's all.
Member Curtis, was there a specific question for staff to answer? I just want to make sure I didn't miss it. That's all.
Well, I do have a couple of, you know, specific questions. I guess I just want us to think outside the box a little bit. And I know that we've talked about the surveys. And of course, you know, most citizens are going to put police and fire as their top concern. Of course, those are absolutely important services that cities and counties provide. But I really think that it's a sort of a false choice. You know, we either fund a bunch of police officers, and there's many programs in the police department that are positive. I think a lot of those are being cut, frankly, or social services, or, you know, community services. And I think it's really, we have to look broader what we're actually doing by not asking 60% of the budget departments to take a hard look at what we're funding.
Member Taggart?
Yeah, I'll parlay Member Curtis's invitation, yes, sure, into a question. So if the cost of the police department has increased by 30% since 2013, I'll take your fact for conversation's sake, but we've only added 9 sworn officers, what explains for the increase in the 30%, what explains the increase in 30% for not actually getting that many more officers?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So you'll see a similar trend across the board just for employees. So the cost of employees has increased dramatically over the last lots of years, but certainly since 2013.
So just to put a finer point on it, even though, to Member Curtis's point, it appears, and it doesn't just appear, we are spending a lot more money on the police department than we were in 2013. We're not actually getting any more service for that money, and in fact, we're probably getting less service.
Yes, I would agree, and I think to put a finer point on it, we've remained fairly static with staffing. At the same time, population and call volume has drastically increased.
Yeah, thank you.
The city manager had a comment.
Member Curtis, thank you for that question, because I have been thinking about that a lot too, right? So, and I just kind of want to, I do want to kind of acknowledge, I think we do have to focus on the proactive, like the services that provide this, that could be that would prevent crime and increase the safety of the community. So as I was kind of thinking about it, to me, and this is based on my observation over the past, I think probably 14 years as a department head, like some part of the executive leadership team. So when it comes to prioritization, and again, I'm talking about my experience and my what I saw with the city of Salem. When it comes to prioritization, it's very different during a crisis and versus a time of stability and growth, right? So when it comes to public safety, we always operated in crisis. So when during crisis, you want to have the stabilization of the most critical systems like public safety, like fire, police, emergency services. If we are in the stability or the growth stage of the community, then we can improve the quality of life and invest into proactive services. So to me, the prioritization is kind of a little different based on where we are at. It is very unfortunate, but over the years, public safety services have always operated in crisis mode because of lack of resources. Chief Moore, I worked with him for many years prior to Chief Umak and Chief Niblock. It's the same thing every year that we are not able to meet the needs. So we were operating in that mode, and I think at some point we have to get out of that and give that stabilization, and then we get into that mode of stability and growth for the community and invest into those services that would help us to reduce the cost on public safety. So I just kind of want to make a comment about my observation, but I completely agree with the stats that you're seeing there, right? Like, so it feels like we are kind of want to invest into public safety, but we are going in the other direction. But we operated in crisis mode for public safety for 12 years, at least that I know of, right? So that's the reality.
Other questions of staff or discussion? Member Geyer?
Thank you, Chair. I actually have 2 questions, so please bear with me here.
We'll bear with you.
Thank you. First one, being in Ward 8, we see a lot of new construction happening in West Salem currently. And I'm just curious, when does police or fire account for new construction builds?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I think our property tax system really puts a stark reality on how much revenue we receive. and the ability to fund services to respond to that new growth, right? So the statutory increase is 3%. Above and beyond new development can be between 1 to 1.5%. So a total of maybe 4.35% increase year over year in property tax revenue. Our costs generally go up faster than that. So the reality is the increased growth doesn't even quite pay for the current level of service, let alone adding services to respond to new residents. And that's from the finance perspective. And I don't know if you want to hear from public safety directly on the kind of what their impact is from new growth.
Yes, I would.
Good evening, Dave Ruboth, Fire Chief. Thank you for the question. And, before we get started, I certainly want to acknowledge the difficulty of the budget this year and the effect that it has on the city and all the employees that are here. That the city of Salem, the employees are a family, and I will tell you that our heart goes out to those that are going to be affected. So we take it very seriously. But as far as what is the impacts to the growth is basically?
Yeah, like when do you start accounting for more people?
Right. Okay. So we use national standard. We have national standards that we benchmark against. We're well below our national standards right now. When we look at the city, we talked about our response times that are in the right now 50% approximately is meeting national standards for response times. Our staffing standards are well below national standards. So national standards dictate 4 firefighters per company. We have 3. Any of our comparables in the state of Oregon all have 4, at least on a ladder truck. We only have 3. So what those causes are is the volume goes up, we have a bigger distance to cover, and then we have to use more of our resources for the same amount of calls. So I'll give you just a couple examples. April 14th, this year, April 14th, 3:59 in the morning, most people are asleep. We had a second alarm fire in the 3rd ward. It took 9 of our companies to address that. That left 4 companies for the entire city. And during that time, other calls still come in. We had 6 concurrent calls at that time. We were down to 1 company in the entire city. It's not an anomaly. On the 22nd, 23rd of April, in a 27-hour period, we had 3 active structure fires, and that definitely depletes resources. And then on this last Sunday, just a normal Sunday, we had 13 concurrent calls in a less than a 2-hour period, and we were down again to 1 company. This is something that's happening daily. As far as how do our resources keep up, that's it. It's just very thinly staffed.
Just to following up, so when apartments are going up, especially multifamily housing, when do you account for there's going to be people there and our call volume is going to go up? Do you start looking at that when they start breaking ground? Or do we wait until people are actually living there?
Well, we're behind right now, right? And so when we look at the city as a whole, the hardest areas to get to right now is the southeast area in that off East Lancaster, South Lancaster. That is the location of fire station, should be for Fire Station 12. So we're already planning, right? We have a plan for that. And then in the north and northwest area is one of the most difficult areas for us to get to, and that's the relocation of Fire Station 8 to get into a better area. It's not even the city limits right now.
That leads me to my next question. Thank you, Chair. With the call responses, I looked at our chart, and you could tell, especially in West Salem, the farther away you are from the city limits, the higher it goes up. Is there any anticipated, I've been a lot of community questions about what if we have a wildfire and we're shutting down fire stations? How does that affect our ability to fight a wildfire?
It absolutely does. I think, we look at, we can use LA as an example of a wake-up call. However, in 2024, more acres burned in Oregon than ever before. This is not an anomaly for LA. This is in Oregon. In 2020, obviously, we had the fires in the canyon. The same time in Labor Day, we had the Alameda fire in Southern Oregon. It went through the urbanized communities of Medford, Phoenix, Talent, and Ashland. 2,600 homes destroyed in a community very similar to this. It wasn't out in the middle of nowhere. It was in an urbanized area. If you're watching the news at all right now, there are extreme wildfires that have happened in New Jersey, North Carolina, Long Island. You're seeing it all around the country. This is not something that is coming. This is something that's here, and certainly a concern we have. I will tell you, leaning forward into it, you know, the 2022 livability bond that was approved by the voters, we're recapitalizing our fleet. Within that, we're adding 2 additional units specifically for wildland fire. We're improving our training in wildland fire. So just in that particular discipline, you know, and coming from Southern California, where I spent the majority of my career, I've been involved in incidents throughout the country. I've seen the devastation of that. I've taken it very seriously, and we're working with our partners to try to make sure that it doesn't happen here.
Thank you, Chief. Phenomenal answer.
Yes, sir.
I think as the night goes on, I'm gonna just keep track of what comes out of your mouth. I have a couple of questions, if that's okay. One, I was wondering if you had written some information that came in our meeting staff report about a potential, I think it's potential, I don't know if it's been decided, potential opportunity to collaborate with Kaiser and another fire department to essentially send whoever is closest, to have a system to send who's closest. I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, appreciate that. So what we use right now is we call mutual aid. And what that is when we get to an area of the city or a time in the city where our units are depleted, we can call our neighbors to come help us. Mutual aid. It's a delayed response because we have to use all of our units first, then we have to call our neighbors. The more efficient way is called what we call automatic aid. We use GPS. We just pick the closest unit regardless of jurisdiction. We can look, there was some mention on obviously new construction. If you go down Cordon Road, we have annexed all the way to Cordon Road in some of those areas, and literally across the street there's a Marion County fire station. Literally, you can throw a rock to it, right? Well, I know if your family or my family has a heart attack or a structure fire right across the street, I don't think anybody cares if it's a Salem fire engine or Marion County fire engine or Kaiser fire engine. I think you want well-trained, well-equipped, and a rapid response. And so we are working on that right now. Our intent is to enter into a mutual aid or auto aid agreement on July 1st. We are training together currently, all of our units, and working toward that to make sure that we're using those resources the most efficiently way, not just for Salem, not just for Marion County, not just for Kaiser, but for the entire capital region.
Thank you. And I have a second completely unrelated question, if that's okay. This just came to me as you were speaking. I'm curious, as we're talking about wildfires and the increase that we're seeing in Oregon, do you have any anticipation of how water being shut off in our parks is going to impact your work?
Yeah, I don't yet. I mean, we do, some of our vegetation fires are throughout the park system. You know, many of the areas that we're talking about, probably irrigated lawns where it might not pose that big of a threat more so. It does not affect our domestic water system that we use for fire hydrants, and so and we also bring water with us. So we are certainly anticipate and adapt to those.
May I ask another follow-up question? So in essence, we would anticipate higher fire risk in the city, but you would, in terms of your ability to respond, feel comfortable in being able to handle whatever comes up?
One of the fundamental characteristics of increased fire risk is fuel moisture. So if you have lower fuel moisture, if we don't have precipitation or irrigation, the lower the fuel moisture is, the easier it is for it to be more receptive to fires.
I'm going to go Member Matthews and Member Cohen.
I have 2 questions as well, if that's all right. So first, kind of looking back at the report, there was a page in here about a limited duration inspector one.
Yes, sir.
That's all right. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that position looks like?
Yeah. So we're one of 6 agencies in the state that is what it's called an exempt agency from the Oregon State Fire Marshal, where we can actually conduct our own fire inspections. The benefit to that is we can set the fire code how we want. We can work with our communities, our stakeholders, to ensure that the way that we're putting the fire code into practice is something that works specifically for Salem. We don't have to use the same inspection process that is used throughout the state, we can do something here, right? And so with that, we have the responsibility to do fire inspections. We're behind on those fire inspections, and we do need another fire inspector to help us to do those fire inspections to get up to speed. The intent with that is they are funded through fire inspection fees. We do charge to do fire inspections, so that will be an offsetting cost. It'll help us first to meet the necessary fire inspections, and then to give our fire marshals a little more strategic plans where they can do community education.
Excellent. So that was my sub question, which was, is there a cost recovery thing, but not my second question. So,
thank you for distinguishing.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure we were all very clear. So on the fire call load density map, right? I mean, obviously the downtown core, the northeast core, we kind of are familiar with those, have lots of service calls. However, if you kind of look around, there's a small little polka dots, right? Yes, and so like I'm looking particularly in Ward 3, and like there's an area here on Kubler and I-5. What would cause kind of this individualized locality of kind of calls?
Yep. So a couple different things, right? Sometimes it is, we have, I don't know if anybody got to go to the healthcare breakfast a couple weeks ago. Salem Health presented, and they talked about their dramatic increase in emergency room visits and how it has outpaced the population, just as our call volume has. Aging population, different changes to demographics. Some of it is social economic, homelessness. There's so many increase in drug use, overdoses. There's an incredible complex mix of different factors that increase our call volume, or in certain areas. There are certain areas that I can tell you on some of them it might be age related. On some of them are, for example, trailer parks. We have a higher propensity of elderly, and so there's a higher number of calls into those types of areas. Downtown, homeless population does create quite a call volume that we respond to. In Northeast, we have a lot of lower income that are working, and they are not taking the time to do preventative care, and so oftentimes they're having to work just to make ends meet. And so when they call 911, it's because they haven't done preventative care, and now it's become an emergency. So that happens throughout the city in different pockets for different reasons.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Cohen.
Thanks, Chair. How many ambulances did Falk have, and how many will we have, and will that be the same, more or less?
Yeah, so the number of ambulances fluctuated, but what we did have was a unit hour requirement. So 1,030 hours a week to deliver ambulance service. Our system, as we're going to build it, is going to exceed those hours. It's difficult to look and say, hey, what are the hours, and is that going to be? We know we're going to provide more hours and more service, but throughout the time since 2022, only 36% of the time did Falk fulfill their contractual obligations. So we haven't really seen what even that number of hours really gives to the community.
Go ahead.
And then how are we going to measure the success of this transition, whether it be the response time, as you just said, or for us, budgetary savings, or how are you internally going to measure success?
I measure, a couple ways. One is ensuring that we're providing a higher level of service. That is fulfilling those hour obligations. We do measure response times. The response time requirements are not dictated by the City of Salem or the Salem Fire Department. They're actually dictated by the county, and so we have to meet those response times. We report those to the county every month, and so we will continue to do that. And then ensuring that this system is economically feasible and that it does not impact the general fund is one of those success measures.
Thank you, Chief. I have a couple follow-up questions of what was discussed. First, a comment, and that is the last time that the fire department had EMS services, there was the Salem area ambulance service. So there was auto aid back then, for at least on the EMS side.
It was like 20 years ago. I'm not sure, but I'll take your word for it.
Yes, sat in many of those meetings. So, but I would follow up. I have a question with regards to how the staffing of the units, EMS is what I'm talking about, how the staffing of the units is going to look different in the fire department, within the fire department, as opposed to Falk. And I asked that question because EMS demand is much greater at 4 p.m. than it is at 4 a.m. But fire departments typically think in a 24-hour clock, 24 on, 48 off, or with Kelly days, 24 on, 96 off. And so how is the fire department looking at the staffing of the units so that the units are available when the call volume is there?
Well, I assure you nobody has 24 on, 96 off. My workforce would love that, but we don't have that. But the staffing is the same as far as, so the composition of staffing is the same, one paramedic and one EMT, and then the hours of staffing are going to vary. We're going to have both 24-hour units as well as surge units. So as you mentioned, we do have hours, peak hours of surge that happen, and we will have units that adapt to those peak hours that are not 24 hours.
Okay. In previous conversations, there was a discussion about the potential for charging for non-transport calls, whether it be EMS or whether it be auto accident. Has there been any further conversations about charging for non-transport types of calls?
Two separate conversations, I would say, probably. When we talk about EMS, we do have the ability to charge for what we call treat no transport. So if we have provided treatment, oftentimes that might be a breathing treatment, or we've provided a diabetic with glucose to wake them up, but this might be a diabetic who understands this, for whatever reason, didn't take insulin, made a mistake, and then needed to be woken up with glucose, but is a good patient that does not need to be transported to the hospital. We could charge for those services that we rendered. The separate question, I think you're asking about fee for service for fire responses, for example, traffic accidents. So we have looked at those throughout the country. There's different ways that is applied. Generally, if those charges do happen, it is for traffic accidents would be for citizens that do not live in the city of Salem, because if you live in the city of Salem, your tax money goes to the general fund that is paying for response. So there's certainly debate on if we should charge a citizen for that response. But if you're not paying taxes in the city of Salem and you're in an accident, that might be an option. So there are some legal challenges throughout the country, but it is something that we're looking at.
Thank you. And going back to your previous comment, if I'm taking a Kelly day, what is the number of days in between shifts?
Right now, we work what we call a 24/72, so 1 day on, 3 days off. But the firefighters also have 15 days a year they have to give back. So there's no longer Kelly days. It's kind of an old where you get a day off. Now, firefighters have to work an extra day on. So there are 15 times throughout the year that they're actually working 48 hours in a row.
That's right. I forgot they went from 24/48 to 24/72.
Yes, sir.
With the 15 days back. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Are there other questions for the fire chief? Vice Chair Cohen.
Thank you. Do you track how many calls for service are provided by the fire department to state government buildings throughout the year?
You know, I would have to look at that to see. We would do it by address. We do addresses. We don't have necessarily geofences for those particular organizations, but we could do a deep dive into it. I will tell you, one thing that we're improving in the fire department is data analytics. We've put a big investment in data analytics, especially with the EMS system, to make sure that we are going to deploy all of our units in the most effective and most efficient way. We have brought on data analysis, or data analysts, as well as a new software program we're onboarding right now that is really going to help us drill down on better data analytics. I can tell you some of the companies, though, that is some of their main. Engine 10 is a good example. They're running into our penitentiaries often.
Are there other questions for the fire chief? Member Nishioka.
Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and ask this question. As you know, Chief, I've mentioned several times that I am concerned and want to make sure that the emergency dispatch is well funded and has enough staff, because it all begins with that call. And so we haven't had any questions about that. But what I'm trying to get a handle on is with the area growing, and because they service not just our area, they service a huge area. How do you feel our staff load is for the dispatch call, and do you see any risks that we may have with underfunding or understaffed?
I'll start with the funding question. The Willamette Valley Communications Center is an enterprise fund. We do take participation or participating agencies pay into that to help offset our costs. 44% of it does come from the city of Salem because of our call volume. So we have 32 agencies now that we through 3 counties that we support. So it is an incredibly busy system. We're the second busiest in the state, over 400,000 emergency or calls that are coming into the center each year. We have been doing a great job on hiring. We were understaffed, even with the FTEs that we had. So we're still, I think we're 11. I'll ask if, I think we're 11 down now. 8, so we're 8 with many going through the hiring process. Right now, our bottleneck is training. So the way that we hire, the dispatchers first come in as call takers. They take our emergency calls, 911 calls, and then eventually they move on to radio operators, dispatchers, which is extensively more training. And so right now we have a lot of call takers that are going through the training process. So we're certainly getting better. I will tell you, it is, when you ask just about being concerned. Our dispatchers right now, they are mandatory to do 10 hours of overtime a week. Mandatory. That's above the 40 hours they have to work. They're forced to do another. It's oppressive, really. And so that is one of the biggest goals, is to get rid of that mandate so that we can have them have a good work-life balance. And it is a incredibly stressful job. 32 different agencies, police and fire. It is, to be able to do that job takes a lot. And so we are certainly working to help them with that. The other concern that I have is that our center, we have outgrown the center. We're at capacity. So we have formed a committee to look at what would a new center location cost, location. We are starting actually our first meetings coming up next week, and we're going to work together throughout the region to see what that looks like. And another area in that is not just from our participating agencies, but we're also looking for state funds for that and some other help to make that a reality.
Thank you.
Member Tigan.
That statistic, or the demand on our dispatch staff to work 10 hours of overtime each week is really striking. Thanks for sharing that with the group. I'm curious, the Willamette Valley Communications Fund, from your understanding of it, who sets the rates that we charge these 30-some organizations for dispatch services?
Yeah, we set the rates. So we have a management analyst that works at the dispatcher center that is assigned there, and we go over the rates every year based on call volume, and then we divide them up every year at this time before budget. We go over the rates. Our advisory committee reviews that. We have a budget committee, then an advisory committee that reviews those rates to see if they're increased or decreased, and then it goes to the entire advisory committee and gets voted on, and then move forward.
And if you had 8 remaining positions filled, is that what would fill the overtime requirement for the other staff?
Well, so we haven't been full, right? And so, so once we get full and we get the number of radio operators, we'll finally be able to see, is this enough? I will tell you, what's interesting in the last game, we talked about it earlier. When we looked at staffing years ago, this was a number of people that we needed, and we can figure in how much vacation time they have, maybe something like that, right? The benefits for employees have gone up considerably to the benefit of the employees. Great. Fair Labor or Family Medical Leave Act, Paid Leave Oregon. These are significant programs where they're protected leave, and so we cannot prevent people from taking those programs. And so what that does is when we have those vacancies, we still have to fill behind, and now it becomes mandatory overtime. So when we finally get all the positions filled, we can really start doing a study and saying, okay, is this enough? We have 79 employees at the WVCC. Is that really enough to staff it adequately, maintain work-life balance, and some kind of semblance of a good work environment?
Chief, my response to that, I think you and I have both served in government agencies long enough to know that you'll never be fully staffed. So I think the idea that you're going to wait until that time to know whether or not, I just implore you to don't wait for that moment and come back to the city council and tell us what does a fully staffed communications center look like, and where would the funds come to make it happen?
I will tell you, it's probably a bad way to express that. We just did a study on scheduling. So we hired a company that looked at, I think, what did we call it, 10,000 schedules? Something.
Actually closer to 1 million.
It was like these computer algorithms, all these different schedules. So we're looking at what are the best schedules and the most efficient way to do this work. But certainly, it takes the humans to do it.
Member Nishioka.
Thank you. In your comments that you're going to be looking for a new location, and again, this is not a question. This is simply my concern. I'm hoping that you find some place that you can make sure that in emergencies, it's able to still run. Where if power goes out, you still have a source to be able to help that. And I know that with where you're located now, you're already struggling with some of these issues. So I appreciate that you're going to be looking, and I'm sure that you're going to be looking for the best location with mechanisms to stay in a safe environment for your staff.
Yes, ma'am. Continuity of operations is one of our highest priorities, as is security. Our location is not in a great spot as it is.
All right, the chair recognizes Member Hoy.
Thank you, Chief. And I'm not making light, but any chance the first floor of this building would qualify?
The only issue, we would have to look. We just started the committee, and if there's an opportunity, we can certainly look at that. That is a significant cost for outfitting a center, millions of dollars, but we're open to everything. Certainly, our first consideration would be existing facilities where we would not have to purchase or construct a new facility. If we could do a retrofit in a safe, secure location, that would be our primary goal, is to make sure that we do it in a cost-effective manner.
Thank you, sir.
Other question? Well, there'll be lots of time for deliberation, but any questions for the fire chief while he is at the podium? There has been a request to swap out a fire chief for a police chief.
All right. Well, thank you for your time tonight. I'll obviously going to be here for any additional questions. I know you have a very difficult job, so thank you very much.
Thank you. If we could have the police chief come to the firing line.
Good evening. Happy to answer any questions. Trevor Womack, Chief of Police.
Member Hoy already had a question.
Thank you. I'll start. And I've been working to formulate my question. It has to do with what Member Curtis had to say about growth and sort of return on what we're paying and how that's different. I've been thinking about that and wondering, is overtime included in how much it has cost us? And if we did have FTEs to not have overtime, would that picture be brighter? Maybe that's
Overtime
a Josh question.
Overtime is accounted for in our budget. Overtime is increasing. It has increased. Several factors influence it. I think for the fire department, overtime is more directly connected to their vacancy. Someone calls in sick because of the mandatory people you have to have on a truck, for example, they have to fill that seat. A little bit different for us, but the amount of people we have on patrol to try to meet a minimum staffing level does influence the requirement to use overtime. So the more vacancies we have does increase our overtime. Along that lines, we're making good progress with that. I mean, along with every police department across the nation over the past 5 or 6 years, there's been this extreme staffing issue, right? And it becomes because of increased attrition at the same time with decreased interest in the profession. And you can understand maybe why that happened over the past few years. And so at one point, 2 or 3 years ago, I was talking to the Budget Committee about the 26 police officer vacancies that we had. Today we have 11. And so we've been hiring at a record-breaking rate for 3 years now. We hired 20 plus officers a year for 3 years. That's record level hiring. So in that sense, we don't have a hiring problem, but we still have an attrition problem. We have to keep our people. So we talk about paying people a fair wage, and the people we're competing with in this realm for the job pool is tight. And so those costs are increasing because of that also, but we're making good progress. Because of our hiring, the attrition's beginning to taper off. We do expect to continue that through this year too. I swore in 4 last week, new officers. We're going to hire 4 more, soon within the next few months. So we're just keep chipping away at it. We're gaining ground, and we want to get back down to a 5% or less vacancy rate. For a while, we were at 10%, and so that means 10 or less than 10 vacancies at any given time for an agency our size is much more manageable. So that does contribute to overtime. The question about growth, there was so much that was discussed over here. There wasn't a specific question, but there is no accounting for growth for the police department. That's why we use the 1.5 officer ratio just as a guide. You can tell that as the population's been growing, we have not been increasing staffing. So there's this gap, which causes that retraction to core services and pulling away from like the downtown bike unit. Over the years we've been doing this death by 1,000 cuts for a decade or more. And so costs have increased because personnel costs have increased. Library personnel costs have increased. Fire department personnel costs have increased. Across the city, all the personnel costs have increased. We just have more, and they're paid more, so you see it more exponentially high, right? But it's still the same factors affecting everybody in the city as far as the increased personnel costs that are happening. Personnel are 80% of our department, more than 80%. There's very small that we can control outside of personnel. Our materials and services budget is very small compared to our people budget. And so that's what's driving costs.
Go ahead.
Because it's related to what you just said, and it might be a question for Josh. I'm not sure. Both the fire department and the police department were held status quo with regards to FTE, or relatively status quo relative to FTE. The fire department budget increased by 7%, while the police department budget increased by 10%. So same level of FTE, a 10% increase in staffing, or not, excuse me, in cost. Had it increased at the same level of the fire department, that would have been $1.7 million less. And I'm just looking at page 141. I'm looking at the police department 6.18 up to 61.8 to 67.8. If I'm reading that, if I'm wrong, Josh, I want to be corrected, but that's what I'm seeing, a 10% increase.
Yeah, I think just one factor related to the fire department was actually the dispatch costs that I was talking about. So the $900,000 that were removed from the fire department budget is now being paid by EMS. So that has to be factored in. I think if you add that back in, it'll be more of a similar increase across the board.
So if the FTE is increasing in big numbers, how are we having a 10% increase? Is it what Member Teigen referred to last time with regards to the PERS explosion, or are there other factors?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. We can bring back a specific breakdown of what caused the increase. PERS is certainly a big piece of it. Compensation is certainly a big piece of it. Both police and fire have collective bargaining agreements with various cost of living adjustments.
I'll also say that our contracts don't align up. So their contract would kick in. A year later, we'd have a new contract. So it's not going to be this equal growth happening. You have 2 or 3 year agreements that don't start at the same date. So when you look at a year-to-year comparison, you don't know how this is playing out between the 2 different contracts.
All right, I saw a hand. Member Hoy, did you have another question or comment?
I did. Councilor or Member Matthews and I have spoken about this, about having a shortage of officers and what that does to impact crime and violence on our streets. I'm not a police officer, but I feel as though You have very few people working, for instance, on high-level drug crimes, very few people working on mid-level, and it's really hard to attack that street-level drug crime that is happening because we are short. So I don't know if you want to add to that before the chief responds, Member Matthews, or?
I don't know that I have anything much to add. I mean, I think that's exactly how I see it as well, is that there's a gap there as far as what we're able to do right now is with drug crimes in particular.
Drug crime and all sorts of livability crimes, I agree. And so this retraction to core services is happening. So whether you want to invest in public safety, if the goal is to reduce violent crime, you're going to need a lot more resources. If your goal is just to be responsive to violent crime, you need resources for that too. And we're just not at the point where we're responsive enough to violent crime either, which is why you see me making tough decisions, like to eliminate a downtown bicycle team that we've had for so long. At its height was 8 officers. Over the time I was here, it dwindled down to 4 officers because we're trying to staff patrol, the 911 response. And eventually you just have to wipe that unit out so we can staff patrol adequately to be reactive to the crime that's happening. So there's very little left for us to be proactive with to try to get ahead of anything. We're barely just trying to keep the staffing for a reactive response. That's the status of your police department right now.
Member Fuller?
Thank you. You said a word that caught my eye, which was livability. So I want to ask your opinion. If our city is more livable, if we have parks, libraries, places where people can go when it gets cold, places where people can go when it's too hot, do you think that that would reduce the need for police in some aspects?
Right now, to be honest with you, we have a hard time keeping up with violent crime. So the trend that we're seeing, and you saw the graphs, we can put those up again, there's a 10-year steady increase of violent crime. Violent crime takes many more resources to investigate. You can imagine, if someone steals your lawnmower, you might be able to take an online report and get that done. Whereas if someone stabs you or shoots you, it's going to take multiple officers there to manage that scene and investigate it, and it's going to take trained detectives to follow up days afterwards to solve that crime. Sure. So the increase in violent crime is having an exponentially higher drain on our resources than other types of crime. So there's just no more capacity for us to deal with livability issues. So yes, of course, I believe, as the fire chief said too, I'm extremely sympathetic about losing any sort of community services. I think we need a full service city. And I advocate for all of that. But my job as a police chief is to describe public safety services right now. But I do think there's benefit to having community partners and community services, of course, when it comes to the betterment of our community.
Can I follow up? Oh, I'm going to learn how to work this yet. So do you think that with a full service city, we would have less need for crime response, violent crime?
That's kind of hard to say hypothetically. I do think that there's benefits from community services, parks and libraries and Center 50 Plus. These are all extremely valuable services for a city. I don't want to lose any of those myself either. Is there a direct connection to library hours to crime reduction? I don't know if I've seen studies that show that before. Intuitively, you would think there's a positive benefit to that. But when you're stuck in a reactive mode, you don't have time to think about that. You don't have enough services currently just to respond to the violence that's already happening, much less get ahead of it. So to pull away, what I would say is you need all of it. This is like the same discussion we've had for years about homeless response, whether it should be a non-law enforcement response or a law enforcement response or a co-response. My answer is yes. There should be all of that, right? And you can't take from one to fund the other. You have to fund all of them for it to work properly. So the same thing here. You have to fund your library properly, and you also have to fund your public safety properly for it all to work properly together. It can't come at one expense for the other. So yes, I do think there's benefit there, but it can't come at the expense of my staffing.
Well, that wasn't my question, though. My question.
No, I'm trying to answer your question. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you.
Member Belaychek, did I see your hand before?
Yes, thank you, Chair Allen. I was trying to get sort of a question in, but
it can come back to you if you like.
I don't know if Member Cohen was going to follow along that line of conversation. I was going to change it a little bit. So
let's stay on the same train of thought. Vice Chair Cohen. Okay. Anyone else? Member Manville.
Thank you, Chair and Chief. So the police union wrote in the voters pamphlet that crime prevention through engagement, investing in our community facilities like parks and libraries is crucial. Parks and libraries offer voter positive environments that keep our youth engaged and out of trouble. These places help keep our youth positively engaged, contributing to lower crime rates and a safer Salem. I didn't quite hear in your responses to Member Fuller's that you fully agreed with that statement, but I'd offer you a chance to.
100% agree. I
okay,
think that there's two things we're talking about, prevention and intervention. I think you need both. I think you need to stop the bleeding. If I had to choose between prevention and intervention, I would choose intervention because bad things are happening right now. So you're trying to stop the bleeding while you also do prevention. That's what I say, you have to fund all of it. And so shouldn't be a binary choice. And you're putting me in a box to try to choose between the two. I want all of it. But there's priority decisions that have to be made because we can't afford all of it. That's where we are legitimately right now. So for me, I have to choose the priority, which for me would be intervention at this moment. You heard from a mother's group today. Those are the folks that I'm listening to. The voices in my head are the folks that are suffering from violence in our community. Violence in our community, which takes intervention to try to stop today, and our officers are dealing with it daily and nightly. And again, if you look at the staffing ratios that we just talked about, we're the lowest staffing ratio out of Oregon's 8 cities, but we have the second highest violent crime rate. And so there's the objective facts that we keep trying to show when you talk about prioritization and needs for public safety services. It should never be a choice between the library and the police department. It turns into that conversation far too often. And I will just say that I want all of it. I want all of it. I truly do. But if the money runs out, you can only pay for so much.
I wasn't asking a this or that question. I was asking what your opinion is as the police chief of our city. If we had these services, would that help reduce crime? And do you consider those things public safety?
I think of public safety, when I define public safety, I think of it in the traditional sense, police and fire and medics. That's just traditionally, when you talk about city government, people say public safety. It's in the budget book that way. So I just tend to think traditionally public safety means police and fire. But what services are you talking about? I'm not sure. But any sort of community services that engage youth in positive activities, whether it's youth sports or library services, or of course these have benefits to public safety in our community. Of course.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mayor, Member Curtis, then Member Hoy.
Thank you, and I really appreciate this discussion. I mean, we have to have this because, again, you're 60% of the budget, and we're having to find $14 million, and we're nitpicking if we can, and so, and also I think the public deserves to know what the responses are. So thank you, appreciate it.
Of course, thank
you.
So
I've got two really super specific questions, and they may be just very easy. So I noticed that we have a $2 million budget for the K-9 unit and 6 FTE. And I just want to know what that is. And I guess the importance of it, is that something that we could look at to either reduce or cut?
I appreciate that. So they're police officers actually that happen to have dogs. So if you eliminated the program, you would cut 6 police officers. Those are officers on patrol that handle calls for service, and they happen to have a K-9 also. So you have to think about it that way. They're just patrol officers that have an extra tool with them. They're lined out in a budget so that you know the cost of those police officers with K-9s and the materials and supplies that go with it, but they're just police officers that handle calls for service, just like other patrol officers.
So they don't necessarily do anything different or more specific than, I mean, maybe they go to certain types of calls.
Exactly, but they'll use the K-9 to help with, it improves officer safety, it helps us apprehend people and solve crime, it helps us locate missing kids and people that are endangered. So there's values to the program, but ultimately, when you look at it for cost savings, the only cost savings you could have would be the materials and supplies associated with it, but the 6 cops are still the 6 cops. You'd have to eliminate 6 police officers to save all that money. I just want to make that very clear.
Yeah, and so that's in addition to the patrol, they're not included in that, they're separate. So the patrol is however many FTE plus K-9, yeah.
Yes, and so especially so you can know the budget, right?
Yeah,
so they're lined out
that.
yes.
And then just one other quick question. Thank you. So what is traffic enforcement? And I know what it is, but
yes, of course.
And I haven't had to deal with it very much. No. So it's a $2.8 million budget, and there's 8 FTE there. And I don't know if that includes the electronic cameras or what all is included in that budget.
This is people again. So the motorcycle officers that we have, it's a very small traffic team for an agency our size, and they're just being consumed by fatal crash investigations. They have very little time for any proactive work anymore. So we had 22 people killed in our streets last year, record high ever in Salem. And you can imagine those take weeks to investigate, and it takes years to train up the investigators to do those investigations. So these are highly trained traffic specialists that respond to all of our major injury and fatal collisions, and then also try to do education and enforcement. But it's a cycle that we're on because we're not keeping pace with our demands with our staffing. That our small traffic team, our specialized small traffic team, is just consumed by traffic investigations now. They just don't have as much time anymore to get out and try to get ahead of crashes and do proactive enforcement. So again, the cost savings there would be the people. Like if you, to save that amount of money, you would cut 7 police officers from the budget, yes.
So they're on motorcycles. They're policemen on motorcycles. But you just said that they're mostly investigative. So I'm not getting that.
They're traffic officers on motorcycles, but they have specialized training and skills to investigate collisions. Okay. That's different than investigating a homicide, for example. And so they have to go through all sorts of skills training and learn all kinds of math that I could never figure out, so I never got there. But they're exceptional investigators at determining speeds and impacts and crush damage and all this, and shooting a scene with our technology to document the entire crime or accident scene. So there's a lot behind it. And then they have to take a case, for example, who's at fault in the collision, were they drinking or under the influence, and get a successful prosecution out of that as well. So in that sense, they're investigators, but they specialize in traffic safety.
We're going to go Member Hoy and then Member Brown.
Oh, thank you. Chief, when you hear about a full-service city, and that to me, as you were discussing, meant the perfect amount for everybody. What would that be, if we had that, what would that be for you? How many FTE?
Well, and this isn't just my opinion, right? So this started back in 2020. I came in at the end of 2020. Jerry Moore had just requested 13 more police officers back then. Just so you know, there's been requests to increase our staffing for a long time. I'm not the first. And there was a community policing audit that was conducted. If you remember, there was a lot of social justice issues happening, and there was a lot of criticism or concern about policing in this country, and including here in Salem. And so the council commissioned a community policing audit. And an independent firm came in and they did an analysis, and they interviewed over 450 people in our community about what they want from their police department. And there's a giant list. It's all on our transparency portal if you'd like to read the report. A lot of recommendations on how we should interact better with our homeless community, all these different recommendations for us for community policing. And there was like an asterisk at the end that said, but you don't have enough staff to do it. And so, you know, that's the expectation from the community, what the community wants and deserves is that sort of policing model, and we just can't provide it. And we've gone and we're going backwards. And so we wanted to understand that staffing differently or better. And so we followed up with independent staffing analysis in 2021. Deep dive into our police staffing, our call load, detectives, investigations division, traffic, patrol. And they came back and said, you need a range of 27 to 83 more police officers just in patrol if you want to do any of this community policing work. And so we're just so far behind the curve on our staffing. It's not just my opinion, but then I come in with outside fresh eyes also, and I get to assess the organization. And I use the 1.5 per thousand just as a gauge. Usually West Coast cities of a larger size, we're the second largest city in Oregon. West Coast cities, larger departments are usually around the 1.5 to staff adequately as like a full service department. We've never been there. I found a news report from, I believe it was in the 80s, where the city council voted to set the standard for 1.5 officers per thousand. We've never been there. And so there's always been this discussion and challenge around police staffing. Costs are increasing, I totally understand, but you can't deny that there's a certain burden on the staff that's happening also. And so we're just in this retraction to services. A full service agency, I'm sorry, would be somewhere around 60 more police officers, put us up close to that 1.5 per thousand. We could restore the downtown bike team. We only have 1 officer on our drug enforcement team working with DEA now. We used to have 3. Since I've been here, we've gone down to 1. So that we're just degrading all of these services that we deserve and should have for our community. So we need about 60 more officers to do that.
Thank you,
quick
sir.
follow-up.
Quick
with
follow-up.
Mayor Hoy.
Did I hear that crime is down? Is that?
Overall, there's 3 buckets of crime. I appreciate you mentioning the report there, because one thing I know for sure is don't look at year-to-year crime stats, right? I mean, there's no meaning behind that. Take a long-term look. So we have a 15-year rolling crime summary that we update every year. It's on our transparency portal. We just put it on there with all the 2024 data. And again, the trends look similar. When you put all crime together, all types of crime, from somebody stealing your bicycle or breaking into your home to somebody being murdered, the crime looks relatively flat, even trending down a little bit. When you pull out property crimes, which are the burglaries and the auto thefts, things like that, it's trending down more recently. Who knows if that's because it's being reported less or it's true, but it's reported crime is trending down. The violent crime for 10 years, when you pull that out, it's murder, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault. Aggravated assault means somebody was injured during an assault. Murder, rape, robbery, aggravated assault has been increasing in Salem for 10 years. And so that trend isn't stopping. That's in our 15-year crime summary report. And that's what's pulling us more into. Even though you might not see a huge spike in the number of calls we might be responding to, those sort of incidents are so much more demanding on a police agency. It's causing us to pull away from some of the other things. It's coming at the expense of following up on property crimes, on livability issues. There's a lot of people in our community very concerned about livability issues that call us all the time, and we just can't respond effectively at all because we're being pulled more into the violent crime response.
And it could be, sir, that because of that data, the numbers are down because people are not actually calling.
I know for certain anecdotally, I talk to people all the time when they have an issue with theft, continual theft, for example, and I'll ask them if they report it. They say no, and I say, why not? It's primarily because they don't think anything will happen anyway, which is kind of true, unfortunately, or they don't want to bother us. And so I always encourage people to report crime no matter what. Call it in, do an online report. We need the data. But there are people that are reporting less because either they think it's a burden to us or that they think there's going to be nothing will happen anyway.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes.
Member Brown, thank you for your patience.
No worries at all. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief Womack, I'm going to follow you, so I will gladly jump into the fray of this conversation. First off, I appreciate you and your team. I want to start off the conversation with a statement, and I'm going to read it. And so for the committee, I'm going to read, this is on page 138, just so you know. So on page 138, in that very top paragraph, and I think I'm going to, if you just highlight the third and the fourth sentence, it says this, especially so the public can hear this. It says, over the past 10 years, Salem's population has grown from 143,000 to roughly almost 178,000. That's a 23.6 increase, while sworn positions have remained relatively flat. Again, our city has grown from 143,700 to 177,567. And I believe last year when we had this conversation, Chief, last year, the year before that, and the year before that, and the year before that, we've been having the same conversation. And the increase of people moving into our city, it keeps rising. It keeps rising, and your team stays flat. It stays stagnant. It does not increase. Earlier, I heard someone mention the comment about, our police, they need to be, more preventive, more proactive. And I think you said this, and I think the city manager has said this. We all want that. But the reality of it is we do not have enough officers that can do all those preventive measures. We want those, but we can't. And I would also say, I heard someone say this earlier. Someone asked you a question. I can't really repeat the question the way that it was asked. But it's in response to the library, the parks, and Center 50 Plus. I said this many a times, and I'll say it again tonight in this particular space. We have over 90 plus parks. We have a library that tens of thousands of folks utilize every single year. And we have a Center 50 Plus where we literally have hundreds of volunteers come in and out of. Center 50 Plus, the parks, and the library. All essential. We all want those services, and we all believe they do play a part in lowering crime. We all believe that, and we have stats to back it up. Having said that, and let me say this piece, because I have not heard this. I said it at the town hall, and I'll say it again tonight. We cannot have those services without public safety. I repeat, you cannot have a safe park without the police. If you walk into our parks any time of the day, if you have an emergency, you're going to call 911. If someone at Center 50 Plus, if there's an emergency, they are going to call 911. In the middle of the night at 1:15 in the morning, if any one of us in this city chamber, if any one of us has an emergency, it's our child, it's our spouse, it's our partner, it's our mom, it's our dad. At 1:15 in the morning, I will put money on it, and I'm not a betting man. Every single one of us in this room will call 911. So we cannot compromise one entity for the sake of trying to save three other entities, because the three other entities, they all stand on the premise of public safety. We cannot do any of those services effectively without public safety. I said it once and I'll say it 1,000 times. We need more first responders. Do we want all those entities strong, being vibrant, livability? We want all of that, but not at the cost of a life. Not at the cost of a life. And I will say this is not a question, it's more of a statement, Mr. Chair. I will say this for the record. When we think about those individuals in the space tonight that are in that uniform, we know that they're on the clock. Every single one of us in this space, we've been in this space now for almost 2.5 hours without incident thus far. But there are things happening all across the city of Salem. And you know why we can be in this space tonight? Is because we have people on the street maintaining and protecting our safety. Now, I realize that people listening to this right now, they are going to come unglued in a variety of ways, and that's fine. But we do not need to reconcile and think for a second that we can have Center 50 Plus, our parks, or the library. We cannot have any of those if we do not maintain public safety as a priority. That's a comment. I yield the floor back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to go with Member Fuller and then Vice Chair Cohen.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And since it was my question that Dr. Brown could not repeat, I feel like I need to respond. I have not heard one person in the public say that they would like to do away with the police in order to keep the library, Center 50 Plus, and our parks. That is not what is being said at all. And I want to reiterate Member Curtis's statement earlier in the beginning of this meeting that we're not against the police. We all appreciate them. I've called them at 1 a.m. for help. We all depend on the police, and we're not trading. It's not apples and apples. It's apples and oranges, and they both need to exist. So I'd just like to state again that this is not one or the other. This is both. And my question to the chief was simply asking his opinion if he felt like the services that are at stake would help reduce crime or not if they remained intact. That was my statement and my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Cohen.
Thanks. I have some technical questions. It's on page 356 of the big book. The first question is, why does the city need a bomb truck? And for the uplift of the bomb truck, why does it cost so much?
Yes, they're expensive. So just so you know, too, we use a variety of funds to fund our large equipment like that. They're rare. We don't have to buy them very often. The one we have is very outdated. doesn't serve us as well anymore. We divided the funding for that between the Police Foundation, which raised money for us, some grant money, and a little bit of money that we had saving up over the years to replace the truck. And so just so you know, that's not just a big hit to the general fund for that truck. We look for outside sources for funding for those big pieces of equipment. But we need a bomb truck because it has all kinds of specialized equipment in there, like a robot. So you might have just seen a press release today, just today. A gentleman threw 3 explosive devices in the past week in the front yard of a residence in southeast Salem. We responded, our bomb team responded to deal with that hazardous material that could easily maim or kill you, and took out that specialized equipment and used it. And use their training and their skills, which are primarily mostly provided by the FBI free of cost, to manage that incident. And we have that service as a full service city. That's what when your question is, do we want that full service or not? The alternative would be to try to call some sort of military partner or OSP and kind of wait for them to respond when we have these 3 incidents happening in a week that we need to respond to and follow up on. So that's why we have the truck and the people. And we just made the arrest on that today, and there's a press release that just went out. So that happens much more than you think. See, I'm the police chief. I get to hear about all these calls and see these things happening all the time. I think the general public doesn't have an idea of how often this stuff actually happens. We try to communicate with press releases and on social media, but it's not all that infrequent that there's dangerous explosive devices in our community, and we need people trained and equipped to handle it.
Thank you. I saw that police motorcycle costs $46,000, whereas a patrol car is $76,000. What is the merit behind a motorcycle if for just $30,000 more you would have the capacity of a car?
Yeah.
So could you explain that to the audience as to why you utilize motorcycles? And
motorcycles are traditionally just better for traffic enforcement when trying to get through traffic jams, get to scenes, when you have to manage a parade. They do special event work too. They do dignitary protection sometimes on those type of motorcades, and so the motorcycle is just a proper tool for that. You can't do that kind of work with a police car. So there is a need for it. Yes, you can do some of that work with a police car, I agree, but there are some specialized things that you need a motorcycle for.
Thank you. One more? All right. I want to say thank you once again for sending me the press releases that have occurred throughout the city, and I hope that every member of this committee was able to read through the reports. The city goes through a lot. The police officers go through a lot, respond for a lot. And in looking at the response, and then just the budget question at large, and with the knowledge of all the reductions that have happened to your force since you've been here, how is the morale of your group? What stressors do you see happening to them, to their families? How can this city better serve our police officers?
I'll tell you, some of the decisions I'm making is because of them. I'm not going to have one of my officers respond without adequate backup or adequate equipment. So I'm not going to provide a specialized service, a team like a downtown bike team, if I can't ensure that my 911 responders don't have adequate, partners and backup and equipment. And so that's the primary driver for the decisions I'm making as far as retraction to core services, is we have to staff our core services properly so they can do our work safely. The violent crime increase that we're seeing is affecting our staff. Okay, our staff sees more violence and trauma in a week than most people have in their entire lifetime. And I tell you what, trauma is trauma, whether you're paid to experience it or not. It's still trauma. And so we invest heavily in our wellness services. We try to provide incredible amount of peer support, chaplaincy, wraparound services for our officers too. But I tell you what, when you're working this workload, it's very stressful. And that's also why you see officers leave occasionally. So there's competition for agencies that pay equal or more in this immediate area. The state is one of those. And we do lose officers, well-trained officers, to those other agencies because the workload is different. It's better on your family, it's maybe more healthy for you, and the pay is the same or better. And so it is hard on our staff, especially with the violent crime increasing, that traffic team that we talked about, to go to 22 fatal accidents in our community. I don't even want to describe what those are like. and the carnage that they see and deal with, and the notifications they have to make to family members. These are incredibly difficult, challenging things that our officers deal with every day as a routine course of business. And we have to make sure we staff them properly so that's not overloaded on a small number of officers. Thank you for asking that question.
Member Belichick, I believe that we kind of forgot about you, and so we're going to circle back. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Allen. And Chief Lomack, thanks for all that you and your department do for our city. And thanks for the information. A couple of the things that you mentioned on wanted me to bring up this kind of question for you that I'm going to get to. Earlier we talked about what seemed to be a conversation of return on investment on public safety services, like violent crime is still increasing and the cost is going up maybe disproportionately. I don't know. But I do know that Salem doesn't live in a vacuum. We're not a bubble. There's other factors affecting crime besides a line on the budget. And you touched on a few of those examples of the horrible increase in traffic deaths with, maybe could have been reduced with more patrol officers on our streets. So that made me think of it. The things that you and your staff see that thankfully we don't have to see every day because of the services you provide. So getting out of the conversation of correlation or line versus line, we know that Salem's population has grown a lot, so that would be one factor to the increase in crime, but you know about this stuff way more than I do and probably most of the committee, so could you touch on what your thoughts are of why crime keeps increasing even though we're investing more and more in the department? Because there's a lot of things I know that are beyond your or any of our control.
Yeah, I think obviously there's socioeconomic factors, there's always employment factors, education factors, there's criminal history factors in our community. Our community doesn't match some other communities in Oregon. There's differences in Salem. We have our state facilities all right here next door or in the city. There's a higher population of people with criminal histories in our city. Let's be blunt about the fact there's just a different demographic in our city, and that all influences crime. And we can't ignore those things. And so it's important to try to understand that as best we can too. And so one thing like our community violence reduction initiative that we kicked off with no more dollars and no more staff was to try to understand this problem better and take a comprehensive strategic approach, not just a law enforcement approach, and yet we're leading the effort as a law enforcement team to try to understand it. And so we dug into the research or dug into the data to see what's driving some of these things. And that report's all available on our transparency portal too. We do have a breakdown of the demographics, who's most at risk for either being a victim of a shooting or committing a shooting in our community. Those folks are both, that whether you're a victim population or a suspect population, usually have 6 or 7 prior contacts with the criminal justice system. They're high-risk people. They're typically young men between the ages of 18 and 35. They're primarily Hispanic. When you look at the racial breakdown, 50% or so or more are Hispanic. It's not that only Hispanics commit violence, of course. I'm just saying these are demographics that help you tailor your response and invest where you're needed. So we have all those demographics, and we looked at a 5-year period, and we saw that our shootings doubled in Salem in that 5-year period. Shootings among youth increased even more dramatically. So you're seeing this rise in juvenile violence that's occurring. Another press release that we put out today, you might have seen it, West Salem, there was a shots fired call yesterday. We followed up on that. Luckily, nobody was hit, but we arrested a 16-year-old boy with a very dangerous firearm. There's a picture of it in the press release. These are happening all the time. So youth violence is on the rise, and that's driving a lot of our violence, actually. That's also associated with gang or group activity. That's on the rise again as well. Why are those things happening? I can't speak exactly why that's happening. Why are more youth being associated with gangs? But it's happening. And so we need to understand the problem. That's why we invested. We're taking a methodical approach, and we research the data. Now we have the demographics. We try to build a strategy. Some of it will be enforcement, obviously. If you shoot somebody in Salem, we are going to find you, and we're going to arrest you. We're going to hold you accountable. Now, what do we do with his little brother so that he doesn't fall into the same trap? We need some partners to come alongside with prevention, for example. We don't really have money for prevention, but we need partners to come in for prevention. So we're pulling together a collaborative approach. We're starting the same thing now with our traffic fatalities. It needs to be a comprehensive approach between street design with Public Works, for example, our partners there, some enforcement and education from the police, some community partners like Safe Routes to School. Everybody knows Beth. We should coordinate all that together as a comprehensive strategy, and we can be a convener on that. I'm happy to do that. That's the work we're trying to do. But as far as why it's all happening, so many different factors at play there, right? Yeah.
Member Manville.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. And I do want to say, in a former job, I ran a bicycle advocacy organization, and working on those traffic deaths was the hardest part of my job. And it happened way too often, and working with those families. So I didn't see the gruesome deaths up front, but I dealt with the emotional. So thank you for your team's service on those, and the rest of your work. You did write on page 138, or somebody wrote, the challenges the department faced are multifaceted and further complicated by reduced funding. And I was curious what you meant by reduced funding.
Well, for example, we lost funding. I think Josh touched on this. Okay, we've absorbed the costs. And so the school district used to pay us hundreds of thousands of dollars for positions for SROs. We lost that funding, but we kept the people. The downtown parking district used to pay for 1 or 2 police officer positions. We lost that funding, but we kept the people. There was a contract that we had too with Chariots, I believe, at one point for some downtown coverage. We lost that amount of funding too, but we still have the people. And so the loss of funding there is increasing the pressure on the general fund. And so, yeah, the budget's going up for the PD, but that's kind of what that means, is there's funding being lost. We just talked about a 7% loss from state revenue shares. So we're losing funding, which is compounding this pressure and problem that we're having with our general fund.
Follow up?
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Yeah, I was like, for years after year for the last decade, police has gone up more than the other departments generally. Like library stayed generally flat, like adjusted for inflation, parks, et cetera. Police and fire have increased significantly, and that's meant more and more of our general fund is going to those two things that we as a community value. But I just wanted to be clear that when you say, yes, personnel inflation is happening across departments, totally understand that, that the tilt and the mix among those 4 library, parks, police, and fire is shifting over the last decade. So would you agree with that assessment?
And I do think that's true. And it's also because in Oregon, the way we negotiate contracts is looking at comparator cities. We're required to do that, right? So you're going to be comparing to other cities. So there's other factors that are outside of our control. Department of Justice is adding more and more investigators. I've lost 2 of my senior investigators to Department of Justice. I have 1 more that's sergeant that's about to go. Right now about to go. We're losing people to agencies that are paying more. And so we're in competition, and we have to have pay equity. And so when you're in contract negotiations, you're going to increase pay commensurate with your comparators. That's just what's going to happen. That's not the same with the library, I'd imagine. So yeah, our costs are increasing more than the personnel costs in other departments. I'm not sure how to avoid that. I guess that's what I'm saying, is like, yeah, that's a natural thing that's going to happen.
Member V.A. Brandel.
You had mentioned,
You got it right.
you had mentioned the state facilities, all the state facilities that we have in our town, our city, and that sparked a question, a couple of questions. One, does OSP respond to calls in our city, not on state properties? And if so, what do they do? What do they respond to?
If it's Salem city jurisdiction, we handle all the law enforcement response. Not that they won't help, or vice versa sometimes, but no, they don't get dispatched to Salem properties or Salem streets. Even that's why we have our own traffic team, right? Whereas if they were in a rural jurisdiction, they would probably handle traffic crashes in a county jurisdiction sometimes, but in a city, we have our own responsibility to investigate our crashes too.
Thank you.
I believe Member Varney has a question.
Thank you very much. It's not really much of a question. It's more of just a comment after listening to all this. I mean, first of all, thank you to you and all of our officers, the trauma and stress you go through, and we need to protect you and provide enough officers so you have people to do what you need to do. I mean, definitely. But then I hear about the increase in violent crime, number one. I hear about the moms group. I hear from you, I believe, that the age of individuals committing a lot of these crimes are decreasing. So the real focus is on youth. I just want to put a plug in there to support the levy, because when I look at return on investment, things like our youth summer programs in our parks and the camps, the things that we do to engage youth during the summer when they're not in school provides that same sort of family and group that I think they're looking for. And I just wanted to mention, I think that's one of those things that would really help if we even built on those programs.
Two quick comments there. Yes, youth violence is increasing, but they're still much, much less likely than adults to commit crime. So you can't say youth violence is the problem, because it's not. It is increasing. The second thing I would say there, if you want to intervene in youth violence, then it also takes a specific type of outreach and intervention. And so I agree. I do think we need youth programming, but I also think Christina that was here, for example, as example, has some ideas on how to do specific outreach with kind of outreach youth that are associated with gangs. That's going to be a different type of programming than it is for, book reading at the library, for example. I'm not saying diminishing anything. I'm just saying there is a specific type of programming that we probably need to fund as a community to try to get ahead of youth violence.
And I was focusing more on our parks, for example, where there's the physical activity and the things getting tuned into the environment and, the competition
I totally
and stuff.
agree. Thank you. Yeah.
Back to member Vieira Brandel.
One of these times I'm not even going to have a question. I'm just going to do it to make you say my name. I have a question, and I will apologize in advance. One, because I know you're not loving our series of questions about nitpicking line items in your budget.
That's
Two,
okay. That's what we do. That's okay.
Two, I sent these questions in kind of last minute in writing, and so I think you probably couldn't answer them because they need time to look at. But I did have some questions about our bomb squad and our SWAT team, and if you can't answer them tonight, that's fine. I'm curious how many deployments our bomb squad has had, or how many, like, on average they have, and how many of those deployments do they find explosive devices?
Very good. We do have some data, and I brought some experts with me here too. So, yes. I'll probably ask Deputy Chief Upke's kind of come up. He's our field operations or patrol deputy chief, so he has both those teams under his command, and so we do have some of that information. It's actually more than you think. I will say with the SWAT team, also that these people aren't dedicated to the teams. Just so you know, they're regular officers with regular jobs, and they also do bombs or they also do SWAT. So it's not a dedicated team, in other words. So these are ancillary duties. So there's costs, like there's extra costs for equipment and so forth, but they're people that are dual use, right? They have a real job that's maybe a patrol officer or a traffic officer, and they might get called out on a bomb call or called out on a SWAT call. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Trevor Upke's Deputy Chief Field Operations. So as of last year, we had 80 deployments with our bomb team. As of yesterday, we had 36 incidents or activities for the bomb team, 12 of which involved some sort of suspicious device, post-blast investigation, or energetic materials, as they say. So, any other questions regarding that?
No, I don't think at this time.
Okay.
But I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
What was there a question about SWAT deployments?
I had some. I guess really what I was getting at with both of those things is it's helpful to know that they have other duties, that this is not their one thing that those team members are doing. And I think with SWAT, I don't necessarily have a question, I guess. I appreciated the information that came in last week in our packets. Maybe I do have a question. Let me see what I say, what comes out of my mouth. Some of that information I had asked to how many times SWAT responds to adolescents, to juveniles. And it's only was a couple of times, I think, this year. And so I guess I'm just curious what measures are in place to make that an absolutely last resort, particularly if we're responding to children. I think anyone under the age of 18 is still a child, as much as they may think otherwise. And it just concerns me to know that we have to do that.
Yeah. So what we do before we deploy SWAT in any pre-planned operation is we're going to do an operational risk assessment. So that is where the investigating officer will take all the factors surrounding the apprehension of that suspect into consideration and then present that to our emergency operations group commander and then at times either myself or one of the other deputy chiefs. So within that, it's going to be criminal history, the actual crime that they're wanted for. So if it's a juvenile that murders someone, then that is going to elevate that risk. If they're known to associate with weapons, the type of location at which they're going to be at, if it's going to be an apartment complex or if it's going to be a single residence house with other kids and other factors in place, it's going to be, are they going to run? Have they made statements to cause harm or hurt others? So we're going to look at that and we evaluate it very, very closely before we ever deploy SWAT because just SWAT showing up on scene increases the risk factor, and so we take that very seriously before we would ever deploy it. So we're only deploying it if it's juvenile in a very serious case. No status offenses. Usually it's going to be involving firearms and great danger to the public.
Member Manville.
Thank you, Chair. So I've often been around the union negotiating table. I was a union president for 4 years, and I've often been there. And I just wanted to make sure, we often are just stuck. We're like, here's how much money, and you get a raise and more work, or you don't get a raise and you get more colleagues, or you get other benefits. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on whether everyone around the table was kind of thinking about that trade-off when we recently negotiated and approved a 9% raise to make us more competitive for our officers. That what that likely meant was we weren't going to greatly increase the number of sworn officers on the ground because of our budget situation. Just kind of when we look at, it's flat in part because we as
can't afford
as labor and as management are making that decision to invest in retaining and getting people in, but a fewer number of people in.
Yes, I think that is exactly the discussion that happens. Yes. And we don't lead HR. Our partners at HR lead the negotiations.
So, Chief, if it's okay, I can take that question. Yeah. So, sorry. Thank you. Member Manuel, thank you for the question. So I just want to kind of explain how the kind of process happens, right? So, when we are ready to negotiate contracts, and again, every contract is different, the HR team has a very structured process that they go through. So I have been part of the HR, so I'm kind of familiar with that now. So the HR team goes through a process where we are, part of our process is we have to compare our compensation structure to 7 other comparable cities that we do. So, and then the HR team kind of says, okay, in order to kind of, whatever the pay structure that looks like for the next year, so this is the dollar amount that we need. And so there is an idea about where we want to be. So, and then we take that dollar amount to the council for a budget authority to say, hey, maybe this is the amount that we want to kind of negotiate. And then the negotiation process starts. So we are limited to not exceed that. So as part of the negotiations, we are very conscious about the fact that we don't want to be paying employees more than what the market is. Part of the goal is also to retain employees and pay them comparable to other cities because we have to stay competitive with the market. The other piece of it is we have to be very conscious about when it comes to retention, and this is not my data, based on the research, when you have an employee leave, if it is an entry-level employee, the cost of that person leaving and coming back, as hiring another employee, it's 30 to 50% of their income. If it's a mid-level experienced, it is 100%, 100 to 150%. And if you have a senior employee leave, it's 200%. So we can't go and negotiate a contract that is lower than our competitive market because we have that risk of losing employees to other agencies. So that's kind of the process that we have to follow and make sure that we're kind of looking at all of that. But we do have a fixed amount that we need to negotiate. And the HR team has been very good about, at least the past 4 years, I haven't seen us going back to the council and saying, hey, give us more money to negotiate. Maybe we might have done it like once, I think we did it, and that was part of the previous contract that we have done. But we never went back to, other than that one time. We take it very seriously to stay within that dollar amount that is given to us.
Follow-up question?
Yeah, just a quick comment. I wasn't critiquing what the outcome was. I was daylighting the trade-off that we make, and that's usually the trade-off that I've made in my unions, is that, okay, we'd rather have a pay raise than an additional and shoulder additional work than have additional colleagues. And so I appreciate that. I appreciate that we're more competitive in the market now, and I just wanted to, that was my point, it wasn't meant to be a critique.
Absolutely. Just one more quick question. I was at the negotiation table for many times over the past 4 years, and I just kind of want to give that credit, and we can discuss the details of the negotiations. I'm extremely proud of the partnership we have with the unions. And when we go to the table and talk about this is what it is like very much give and take. Right, so I want to kind of give that credit to them about their willingness to partner with us. And the other piece of it is, as we are talking about why is police increasing a certain number and the fire, and I can tell you even within AFSCME unit, IT versus library versus HR, not HR, but so there's different percentages. It goes up and down. When we are negotiating, we have to look into that particular service. If it is a police service, we are comparing with the other police agencies with the other of 7 comparable cities. So every time it's different based on the demand in the market. So some years, and I have seen, I'm part of the IT department before, the IT costs increased high. That was like a couple of years because the market it was hard to find IT employees. And after that, it has gone down. So that ups and downs happen every year based on the market. And I think the chief already talked about it was extremely difficult to recruit police officers the past 4 years. So that's the kind of the trend that we are addressing right now. So.
All right, we still have some more field to plow this evening. Is there an interest in a 5-minute break, or should we just keep going? I'm seeing nods for a 5-minute break. So we're going to take a quick 5-minute break, and then I know that Josh has some more information for us. If we could get back to our seats, please. All right, let me give you a quick lay of the land for the remainder of the evening, because we're not going to be here past 11:15 or so. we do need to hear from Josh with regards, well, let me back up. We have been provided a city manager's proposed budget. That's what we've been working on as our basis. There was a motion when we met several months ago asking staff to bring back in the form of information what a proportional cut budget would look like. So we want to make sure we have time to get to that this evening. So after Josh provides his budget, the information, if we could focus more on questions to provide staff that they're going to need to get back to us for the next time. And as far as speeches or long conversations, if we could hold those over till next week and just focus on the questions for staff this evening so that we can get out of here before too terribly long. With that, I'll turn the time over to Josh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excellent introduction. This was a motion that was provided back in January for us to bring back a scenario with roughly proportional cuts to library, parks, recreation services, police, and fire. And I do want to caveat this. It is a scenario. It is not a budget. It's not something that you could just say, okay, let's go with this one, and then it could replace. So it's not at that level of detail. It's using averages at a very, very high level. So just as far as the methodology, what I did is I took the current community services proposed reductions, approximately 5.8 million, 42 FTE, and I redistributed it back to those three services. So with this motion, all the other reductions that are proposed remain the same. So in other departments that aren't community services, fire, or police, this is just redistributing that community services portion over these three areas. So what it would do for community services is an approximate 6.24 FTE, $860,000. And in full transparency, I use average employee costs, not classifications, not super nuanced. It's just average cost for each of the service area employee. For fire, approximately 10 employees, and for police, 12.5, for a total of 28 or 29 employees. Again, at this high level of detail, for the combination of library, park, center 50 plus, and administration and community services, looking at approximately 6.24 FTE. We didn't go to the level to say, okay, this is 2 library employees, 2 parks employees, 1 center 50 plus employee. It is drastically different than what's in the proposed budget. So several factors smaller of the impact on the programming at the library, center 50 plus, and parks. But it's not at the level of detail that you might hope. For the fire department and discussions with the fire chief, what this would mean, while we said 10 FTE, it would mean a fire company. And the current projected impact would be a closure of 1 fire company. And instead, in the past, the city has closed particular fire stations. This is presenting a rotating station closure throughout the city's 11 fire stations. We talked about the response time earlier this evening. The projected reduction in response time standard just from that one company being reduced is 51.2 to 44.8. So a pretty significant impact with that one resource not being available. And what that means, the impact, it's a nice percentage number, but it's an additional 800 incidents projected not to meet the response time. For the police department, looking at, the impact was 12.5. We're looking at 12 employees, 1 sergeant, 1 corporal, 9 officers, 1 crime lab technician. And these are the 4 areas. This is a scenario, not a proposal. But the chief was kind enough to put together the impact of what areas might be reduced if he was presented with this scenario and had to actually make a budget with it. We've talked about some of these areas this evening. So the strategic investigation units and DEA task force, the traffic team, property crimes and crime lab technician. This shows the high level service impact. There's additional detail in the staff report. But still a pretty significant impact to fire and police with that redistribution. I'm going to leave it there and just see if there's any questions on this scenario.
Questions of Josh. Member Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Josh, is this like a 5% cut from each of those services? What's the percentage cut? It's proportional at what level?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I'd have to go back to the workbook, but I think it was approximately 7%.
7, thank you.
Member Tigan.
I think I'm going to form this question on the fly, Josh. I'm curious if you recall the projection that this year's budget is based on. What is our deficit next year in that next year's budget? What are we looking at?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So I believe it's 8.9 million is projected for fiscal year 2027 with the current level of reductions proposed for 2026.
So if we pass the city manager's budget as, to make it clear, if we pass the city manager's budget as proposed to us, next year we'll have an $8 million hole that we also have to fix next year.
That is correct. I think there's an assumption there that it would be all reductions. I think we would look for a combination of revenues, efficiencies, and cost savings.
And maybe we could find $2 million in efficiencies and cost savings, and what we'd be left with is a $5.8 million hole next year that we'd have to fix.
Could be a possibility, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Member Manville.
Thank you. Was there a reason that the chief modeled rotating throughout all the stations, including the busiest stations?
Yeah, I'll let the chief respond to that one.
Thank you for the question. Couple different reasons. One is equity of service throughout the community and equity of reduction of service throughout the community. When we look in throughout the community, one thing that has happened previously is they closed a slow station, Station 11. So right now we have 11 engine companies. Of the 11 engine companies we have, 10 have met the threshold by the National Fire Protection Association to staff an additional company. 2,000 calls a year. Engine 11's our slowest company. They ran 1,948 calls last year. So we're almost at the threshold for Station 11. If we just close Station 11, not only would we disproportionately affect West Salem, the other issue is we're also right on the verge of doing a seismic upgrade on the bridge. There's only 2 companies on the west side of the river. And so there's going to be significant delays getting over that bridge. And by closing that company, if we had one company on the west side of Salem, it's just, there's no good mutual aid. We're surrounded by volunteers. So, so that scenario that is used before, I definitely wouldn't support that. I don't think that would benefit the community. However, rolling brownouts throughout all of the community would then spread that equally.
A follow-up, Member Manville.
Thank you. And thank you, Chief. Certainly understand the need for services across the community and understand some of that reasoning. If you emphasized some of the stations being more closed, but not closing a station entirely, would that change the 44.8? Like if you said, hey, we're always going to staff East Salem because that's busy, but you know, a third of the time Station 11 is going to be closed, or some mix like that. Like when you're doing these calculations, is there a way to get higher than that 44.8 if you change the mix of which stations were closed, what percentage of the time?
Yeah, so yes. So for example, Fire Station 3 is our busiest station in Northeast. If we close that, the response times go down in a higher percentage. I will tell you they're all projections, and as we look at it, when I just mentioned the last 2 weeks where we've been those days where we've run out of, we've had one resource left in the entire city. This is, you know, with that scenario, we're going to have 0 resources left in the city to respond, and so those are probably best case scenarios.
Member Brown, you don't have to wait 20 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. Mr. CFO, I need to follow up on Councilor Member Tigan's question, just to make sure that I'm clear. So with the alternative budget that you just shared with us, there still will be a $7 to $8 million, I would say, just left for us to fix next year, even with the alternative budget?
Yeah, appreciate the question. So in the case of the city manager's proposed budget or this alternative scenario, it doesn't really change the picture for next year. It just alters the impacted services. So in either case, there's still a $8 to $9 million problem for fiscal year 2027.
Right. So even if we pass the city manager's budget, we will still have a deficit, A, and even if we were to pass this current alternative budget, we will still have a deficit.
That is correct, and that's for a few reasons, right? Revenue is not keeping pace with expenses.
Right.
We're also solving part of the deficit for the current year with one-time cost savings and one-time revenues. So you're feeling the full impact of those not being present for fiscal year 2027. So that's why you see the large jump from, I think we're showing $2 million deficit for 26, jumping up to that $8 to $9 million.
Mr. CFO, I appreciate you explaining that, because I think that's where, I mean, I can't speak for any of the other members that are there, but there's a lot of weight with that particular answer, because each direction we take, we're still going to be left with a big hole that we got to fix. And for me, I'm just thinking about just the community in general, because yeah, there's a lot there. So I'm good, Mr. Chair. I yield the floor.
Thank you. Are there more questions for Josh specific to the alternative scenario model? I am not seeing any questions. Maybe it's because of the time on the clock. That could very well be. All right. Member Manville, maybe you can close out the question.
So sorry. The last question I had, would we have to how many people would we have to let go versus vacancies under this scenario? Do we, I guess we probably don't know that because it's back in the envelope and not specific, so maybe I'll.
Well, that can be something for them to bring back.
Yeah, sorry, thank you.
There's 29 point something FTE that are let go. I don't know if there's a way for you to identify how many of those would be currently open positions versus occupied positions.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I can't answer at a very high level. I think it is true that fire and police have large portions of vacancies right now. I think the thing I would really focus on is the service delivery that would go away, because right now what fire is doing for those vacancies, backfilling with overtime. So even though perhaps the position, you're not laying off a position, but you are still reducing the service. So a very different scenario than the proposed budget.
Okay, city manager and then member Matthews.
So I just want to kind of add additional piece of information there. And I know this question comes up in pretty much every budget meeting, but even if the positions are vacant, there is an impact to services. Even those are the positions that are being eliminated, there is an impact to service. I just want to give an example. In case of police, let's assume that 200 positions, and usually it is 5% vacancies through attrition that we carry. That is like 10 FTE. But if you're eliminating those positions, then you're operating at 190. 5% of vacancies happen, right? So that's kind of how. So now you're operating at 181 or whatever. So so you're reducing your workforce by that many positions. So that is kind of why there is an impact to service to those services.
Member Matthews.
My question's more on that overtime aspect. So because of kind of mandatory staffing levels, would actually like some of these cuts or some of these vacancies, or sorry, these reductions in staff, especially in the fire department, would they really have an alternative or an actual savings? Because wouldn't we just be filling them back with mandatory overtime?
And I'll take that, Councilor Matthews, Member Matthews. So that was part of what I covered in my budget message. And when we looked into reducing positions in public safety, that would not give us any cost savings. And we will get further into this reactive mode of operating in both those departments. And we are going to increase the costs for the city through that. So that's one of the reasons why we didn't even consider reducing positions there.
I'm gonna move down the agenda just to make sure we cover everything. So we're just, I'm simply meaning that we're opening up the floor for staff for questions on any topic. Is there anything that staff has questions, or excuse me, that members have questions of staff that you would like them to bring back before our next meeting? Member Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Josh, I would hope you could address this next week. Could the operations fee be adjusted to fund ongoing maintenance, not replacement, but ongoing maintenance of some capital assets, such as parks?
Yeah, we can bring that back.
I'm sorry?
We can bring back that
Thank you.
answer, yes.
Are there other questions of staff for additional information? I will also add that Member Dixon had provided you a motion to review. He has graciously accepted to hold that over to our next meeting, but please make sure you take a look at it so that we're prepared to have a robust conversation on that at your next meeting. The agenda does allow for public testimony for anything that is not on the budget. Is there anyone present who would like to speak on an item that was not on this evening's agenda? I think I said budget, on this evening's agenda. I don't see any. Any last opportunities for Member Tigan?
I'll say if you want to do one, thing to, I know it's a lot to think about tonight, but I have been working with folks for the Political Action Committee that are supporting the levy. The new signs have come into Salem. I have a truck downstairs. It's got some signs in the back if anyone wants one to put in their yard. I don't generally deal things out of the back of my truck on city property. I just want you to know that. But let's make one exception tonight. I'll be down in parking spot 10.
I really hope you don't get quoted out of context on that one. Stacy.
Your last time for the night. I'm sorry, I don't have a question. I just have a comment and some food for thought. I think this was a great conversation and a really robust conversation about what we all view as essential to the city. And as we're talking about a full service city and what that means, one thing that never came up was the airport. And I'd just like to highlight that, particularly as we're having conversations and as there are national conversations about what it means to participate in disappearing people out of our country without due process. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Okay, I see nothing else. We're going to adjourn, but we will see you back next week, next Wednesday at 6 o'clock, right, Josh? All right, see you then.